All right. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being patient and waiting for us. We had to get a little clarification. It is 9:43. I am Mike Walsh, and I am going to call this meeting to order for the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools to the State Board of Education. Let's see. I might go back over my notes. Where do I want to begin? Right here. Members of the public who wish to make public comment may do so in person or by calling into the meeting. Public comment will be limited to 1 minute per person for each item. Members of the public wishing to make public comment in person should sign up on the sign-up sheets located on the tables in the back of the room. California Department of Education staff will call up members of the public by name when it is time to take public comment. Individuals should form a queue behind the microphone at the back of the boardroom and wait for further direction from department staff prior to making public comments. Members of the public wishing to dial in for public comment should view the live stream of the meeting. The number and access code will be provided at the start of public comment for each item. Prior to making public comment, callers who are watching the meeting live webcast should make sure that the volume on their computer is muted to avoid echoing sounds during the call. When it is a caller's turn to make public comment, the caller will hear a voice announcement that says that they are unmuted. Another announcement will be made when a caller's time for public comment has ended. To call in for public comment, dial 717-908-1926 and use access code 1166083#. All right, now at this time, I've asked Commissioner Hennell to lead us in the flag. Commissioner Fennell. So if you'll lead us in the flag salute.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before I have the rest of commissioners introduce themselves, I want to acknowledge that we have our State Board of Education liaisons, Cynthia Glover-Woods and Sharon Olken, both here with us this morning. Thank you very much. And at this time, we'll start at my far right, and we'll just work our way around to simply tell us who you are and who you represent.
Good morning, Matt Taylor, represent charter schools.
Good morning, Todd Fennell, representing California County Superintendents.
Good morning, Erica Jones, representing teachers.
Elio Brazil, representing superintendents.
Mike Walsh, and I am representing governing boards.
Stephanie Farland, and I am representing the State Superintendent of Public Instruction.
I'm Steve Olmos, representing parents and guardians.
Derek King, representing charter schools.
And at this time, I will entertain, we are on item 5, entertain a motion for approval, for review and adoption of our meeting notes from the February 2023 meeting.
I move to approve.
So we have a motion, and
Commissioner Taylor seconds.
Commissioner Taylor second. Motion made by Commissioner Brazil. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote at this time. I'll vote first, yes. And Matt Taylor?
Yes.
Steve Olmos?
Yes.
Derek King?
Aye.
Erica Jones?
Yes.
Todd Fennell?
Aye.
Stephanie Farland?
Aye.
And Gila Brazil?
Aye.
All right. All right. Members of the public who wish to make general public comment by phone for items that are not part of the ACCS agenda may dial in now. Please call 717-908-1926 and use access code 1166083#. You must enter access code 1166083# to be added to the caller queue. Callers making public comment should make sure the volume on their computer is muted to avoid echoing sounds during the call. So at this time, item number 6, Charter Schools Division Update. I turn it over to you, Stephanie Farland.
Thank you, Mike. I just wanted to give a couple of updates. The Public Charter School Grant Program, we just recently released a 4th round of startup subgrant funding for planning and implementation of charter schools. So that is open. So if you know of any new or new charter schools who have not yet applied for the grant, please ask them to do so. You can go to the CDE's Charter Schools Division website and get all the information there. We're also currently seeking charter school developers, operators, governing board members, and authorizers to serve as peer reviewers for those that come in. Also, the annual CDE's annual information survey is live right now. It closes in a couple of weeks, so it would be great if you get the word out that charter schools, it's very valuable information in that survey. And so we really encourage all charter schools to fill it out. It's not long, doesn't take very long to do so. And other than that, I do want to actually say that today will be my last ACCS meeting. I am leaving the department, and just want to say that it's been really a great honor to serve on this commission on behalf of the state superintendent, and working with the staff in my division who are outstanding, as you can see every month in our items, how much work our small little division does for the state of California and for the charter school arena. So I'm just very proud of them and proud to have been with the department for, it'll be almost 3.5 years. I'll be here through the May State Board meeting, and then that will be it. So I just want to say thank you, and thank you to my fellow commissioners. I've learned a lot in this job, and I've learned a lot in this position. So thank you. Thanks, Mike.
And thank you for, and you're going to get more of this later on, but thank you for the efforts and the work. I've known Stephanie for a while now, and diligence and really paying attention to detail is absolutely appreciated in the work you do. So, but you'll get more honor and love later. So at this point, general public comment. We will take public comment first from anyone in the room who would like to speak on an item that is not part of the agenda, and then we will take general comment from those on the phone. So is there anyone here in the room today? And by the way, thank you for joining us today. It's good to even see an audience. So is there anyone who would like to speak on something that is not part of the agenda? Please begin. Go ahead.
We do have public comment, Commissioner. Will you please line up? We have comment from Eric Premack.
We'll need to get his microphone turned on.
There we go. Does that work now?
Yes.
Eric Premack with the Charter Schools Development Center. Thank you, Stephanie, for your work generally and on this very long agenda. Notwithstanding your hard work and your staff's hard work, we have some real concerns about the structure of the agenda. First off, we don't think it's compliant with the Bagley-Keene Act in terms of the open meetings laws that should give the public reasonable opportunity to address the commission, and a 1-minute limit on high-stakes issues is not reasonable. There are other problems that I won't go into in the interest of time. We also think this raises some significant due process concerns. As many of you know, due process requires notice, opportunity to speak, and impartial hearing. Here, in this case, I think we've knocked out at least the first two, and we have a significant potential problem there. I think this agenda needs some work. I think there are some fixes to it, but can't get into that in a 1-minute comment. But I wanted to lay out those concerns from the get-go because I think they're overarching relative to at least 2 of the meeting agenda items. Thank you.
And is there anyone else? Seeing none. At this time, we'll take general public comment from callers. Is there anyone on the phone?
Yes, we do have 2 callers in the queue. Good morning, caller. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
This is Suzanne Cooey from the Charter Schools Development Center. Next month, the State Board will revisit verified data, a key component of charter renewal since AB 1505. The Board's verified data policy shapes the use of academic growth data in renewal. Given the complexity and importance of academic growth data in renewal, and given the ACCS's role, we ask ACCS members to observe this item next month. We also ask ACCS members to review charter partners' joint recommendations on verified data criteria and data use procedures submitted April 6th. CSDC, DCSA, and all charter school organizations invited by CDE to participate in the state's verified data work group collaborated to develop clear input to the state board. Our 8 recommendations are needed for sound data use and renewal, a critical need, especially for schools that serve concentrations of challenged students. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Next caller, please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now. Caller with the phone number ending in 0418. You're live. Go ahead. Okay, we do not have any callers at this time.
Okay, we will move on. The ACCS will hear 3 funding determination items today and consider evidence regarding a notice of violation issued by the California State Board of Education to State Board Authorized T.I.M.E Community Charter. So, item number 1. One of the procedural concerns that we were getting clarification on before we started our meeting is that we know for sure we have several commissioners who will need to recuse themselves for items that are for the several schools that are part of item 1. The school numbers are listed in the following order: school number 33, whichever item that charter that was, number 49, number 50, number 67, and charter number 135, and 141. So those 6 schools will be we'll be doing the voting separately for those during the recusal, and I'll explain that more when we get to that point. But at this moment, all of us will be listening to the entire presentation, and then during the vote, we'll recuse ourselves one at a time to manage the conversation, so we'll just take the vote on those items. So are there any questions by the commissioners on that process? All right, fantastic. So, item number 1. People wishing to make public comment by phone for item 1 should call in at this time. Dial 717-908-1926 and use access code 1166083# when prompted. You must enter access code 1166083# to be added to the caller queue. In item 1, we will consider requests for funding determinations from 141 charter schools. McKenna Huey from Charter Schools Division will present this item. McKenna, it's all yours.
All right. Good morning, Chair Walsh and members of the Commission. My name is McKenna Huey, representing the Charter Schools Division, and I will be presenting items 1 through 3 of today's meeting agenda. So prior to jumping into the first item, a little bit of background on funding determinations. Pursuant to California Education Code, Section 47612.5, a charter school may receive funding for its non-classroom-based instruction only if a determination of funding is made by the California State Board of Education. If a charter school's total average daily attendance is less than 80% classroom-based, it must obtain a determination of funding from the State Board to receive funding for its non-classroom-based instruction. So Senate Bill 820, Section 75, which was signed by the governor in September 2020, made changes to the funding determination process for fiscal years 2020-21 through 2021-22. This impacted charter schools that had an active funding determination that expired on June 30th, 2021 or June 30th, 2022. Specifically, this bill extended the deadline for non-classroom-based charter schools to submit funding determination renewal requests from February 1 to June 30th, 2021 or 2022. Pursuant to this bill, non-classroom-based charter schools that submitted a complete funding determination request by the June 30th deadline received their current level of funding for 2 years. These funding determination requests did not require the approval of the State Board. The California Department of Education worked very closely with charter schools who were impacted by Senate Bill 820 to ensure that they submitted a complete funding determination request by the applicable deadline. For both fiscal years, all schools who were required to submit by June 30th submitted by this date and received their current level of funding for 2 additional years. So due to the impact of Section 75 of Senate Bill 820 on the funding determination process, for fiscal years 2020-21 and 2021-2022, the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools and State Board have heard significantly fewer funding determination requests than in previous years. As this section of the bill does not apply to fiscal years 2022 and 2023 and beyond, the department anticipates that this commission, as well as the State Board, will return to hearing a large volume of funding determination requests, particularly at this meeting and the May State Board meeting. So moving into the actual item, this item considers determination of funding requests from 141 charter schools. As illustrated in this table, 138 charter schools are requesting 100% funding for their non-classroom-based instruction. 1 school is requesting 85% funding, and 2 schools are requesting 70% funding. So the department proposes to recommend that the State Board approve the funding determination requests for all charter schools presented in this item at the funding level requested by each charter school. The department proposes to recommend that the State Board approve all charter schools' funding determination requests for the respective time periods specified in Attachment 1. So pursuant to regulations, a charter school requesting a determination of funding may qualify for either 70, 85, or 100% funding for their non-classroom-based instruction, or may be denied. The expenditure and pupil-to-teacher ratio criteria for all funding levels for non-classroom-based instruction are summarized on this slide. To qualify for a proposed recommendation of 100% funding, a charter school must spend at least 40% of its public revenues on certificated salaries and benefits, spend at least 80% of all revenues on instruction and related services, and maintain a ratio of average daily attendance for independent study pupils to full-time certificated employees that does not exceed a pupil-to-teacher ratio of 25:1, or the pupil-teacher ratio of the largest unified school district in the county or counties in which the charter school operates. So regulations also outlines the submission deadline and funding periods. For existing non-classroom-based charter schools with current funding determinations, the deadline to submit is February 1 of the fiscal year prior to the year the funding determination will be effective. Also pursuant to this section, the funding period shall be for a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 5 years in length. As regulations do not provide specific guidance on the number of years a charter school shall receive funding for its non-classroom-based instruction, only the minimum and maximum number of years permitted, it is the department's current practice to recommend time periods based on the number of times a charter school has renewed its funding determination with the State Board. So for charter schools submitting a funding determination request for the first time, the department typically recommends a period of 2 years. For charter schools renewing their funding determination for the first time, the department typically recommends a period of 3 years. And for charter schools' subsequent renewal funding determination requests, the department typically recommends a period of 4 years. The department developed this practice to establish consistency in the manner in which funding periods are recommended, as well as to ensure each charter school's familiarity with and awareness of the funding determination request process, expenditure requirements, and criteria to receive funding for their non-classroom-based instruction. The department previously recommended 5-year periods dependent on a charter school's academic performance index rank. However, as API is no longer calculated, the department does not currently recommend 5-year periods. So in conclusion, all schools presented in this item qualify for their requested level of funding. As such, the department proposes to recommend that the State Board approve the schools at their requested level of funding for the time periods specified in Attachment 1. Thank you for your consideration of this item. I'm happy to answer any questions the Commission may have.
So at this point, we're just going to ask questions to get clarification of any information that's been presented for us at the moment. If we have deeper questions, we'll take those questions after we do public comment. And so being mindful of the questions again of your schools, you don't want to, if you're recusing yourself from something, you want to avoid those conversations. But at this point, any clarifying questions? And we'll start with Stephanie has one thing to say as well.
So McKenna, just to be clear, at least in this first item, the 141 schools that are in this first item, the levels that we're recommending for them are actually the levels that they requested, not ones that we're handing out.
That is correct. All schools included in this item requested the level of funding that's outlined on the slide as well as in the item, and they did not submit a consideration of mitigating circumstances for their level of funding.
Thank you.
And then I have one quick question, and then we'll move around as well, because one of the questions you may have just answered, and I want to get clarity on that, is that the reason we have some of them, or the length of time they were awarded is different than what they may have asked, is the tradition of if you're getting your first time funding, you get 2 years, first renewal 3, and multiple fundings 4, it goes up. That's what I heard you say.
Yes, that is correct, and I've also pulled up the slide again so you can see it as well.
All right, thank you.
I had a question following up on what you just said.
Commissioner Taylor and then Commissioner King.
Are there any differences between the table that you're showing us right now and the spreadsheet that's attached? Are there any schools that you didn't follow this rule of 2, 3, and 4 years for?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner King?
So my question, again, not to beat a dead horse, but it's along those same lines with respect to the 4 years versus the 5. I understand, I heard what you were talking about with respect to the API, but it also seems as if the charter schools are being penalized, especially longstanding charter schools, instead of getting the 5 years to go to the 4. And that's pretty significant when you're talking about millions of dollars for a school to be able to project. And so my concern with that really relates to it creates this inequity for a longstanding charter school versus the way districts are actually funded, because now you can't project out the same way. So because API is gone, can you just please add a little bit more color to the fact that it seems that because API is now no longer here, that charter schools are actually being penalized for that?
So I'll answer that, Dr. King. We are following regulations. So it wasn't, the department didn't say, oh, API would be a good measure. That's actually in regulations. And so I think that if we want to go back to, which I support, go back to 5-year recommendations, we need to figure out how to make changes to the regulations. Because we follow the regs, which seems to be the cleanest way, because I don't know that we have anything in regs that would help us determine what would qualify for 5 years. Right now it's API. So I think, that's a conversation to be had with State Board about whether or not those regs should or can, at this point, be updated. We know how long they've been in existence. But that's, we feel bound to follow regulations. And when there's nothing that shows what would qualify for 5 years for us, then we feel, I understand where you're coming from. I really do.
No, thank you for that answer. And so I just wanted to make sure that went on record, because if it needs to be noted at the State Board, then I would think that would be appropriate.
Do I have any other questions from the dais, from the other commissioners? All right, seeing none. Are there any public commenters on the phone for item 1?
No, there are no callers in the queue.
All right. Is there any public comment here in the room? Well, again, public comment will be limited to 1 minute. Do we have anyone here in the room?
We do have some individuals signed up for public comment. Will you please line up Jeff Rice, Kina Collins, and Eric Premack?
Good morning, Commission members. Good to see you, some of you for the first time in person, and many of you in person again for the past 3 years. Jeff Rice with A+. It just so happens that my comments are very relevant to the discussion that just took place, and that has to do with the progression from 2 years to 3 years to 4 years and no progression to 5 years. The statute states clearly that funding determination periods may be from 2 to 5 years. It is true that it cited one example that is obsolete, having to do with consecutive API scores of 6 or better, but in our understanding, neither statute nor regulation preclude a funding determination recommendation and decision of being 5 years for any other reasonable bases that you may determine. So I went through the list of schools today.
Time.
And there are 60 schools in this list that have been in operation for a dozen or more years.
Thank you. That
could
is time.
easily be
We're going to really
progressed.
hold tight to that 1 minute, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good morning, ACCS members. My name is Kyna Collins, and I'm a veteran charter educator representing the California Teachers Association. We must express our continued concerns with this process. It's broken. It opens the door to bad actors, just like the A3 charters and other groups who've taken advantage of the loopholes to steal hundreds of millions of dollars. This group raised significant concerns regarding the funding determination process, the intersection of authorizers, and the state-level process. You are being asked to review and recommend 141 funding determinations to the SBE that represent over $1 billion in funding, and there are a variety of issues to call out. Some NCBs have 0% in reserve, and there are some that have reserves that are over 100%. Some that have a significant portion of their revenues going to for-profit companies such as K-12 with no competitive bidding. These tend to have little to no reserves. Thank you for your time.
Hello again, Eric Premack with the Charter Schools Development Center. I'll associate myself with Mr. Rice's comments. I'll also add that the 2, 3, and 4 year structure that you saw on the slide earlier has also been sort of ginned up out of whole cloth and is not reflected itself in the regulations. Given the burden that schools have to go through, that staff have to go through, that you as commissioners have to go through, and the state board has to go through, I think it makes sense to, in cases that meet the spending targets and whatnot, to grant them a 5-year determination if that's what they've requested. It's very burdensome. I had to drive over a mountain pass to get here today. I have other members in here today who have had to drive 6, 7, 8 hours to get here, also through windy roads. This is a burdensome process. It's a hassle. It typically doesn't catch anybody. And I think we need to think about, what kind of burdens we're placing on our schools, and are we spending our money and our time correctly?
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you for the comments. So, now that we've had public comment, we will deliberate and take action. Again, we can, when it comes time for a motion, I'm going to appreciate it if someone would offer a motion minus those 6 schools that I mentioned, so that we can handle those one vote at a time. But for right now, it's any deliberation, any questions that you would like to ask that will take you answer some of your deeper questions. So, do I have any questions here with the commissioners? All right. Then I will, seeing there's no questions, I will entertain a motion. And again, the 6 schools that I will be pulling aside are school number 33, 49, 50, 67, 135, and 141. So I will entertain a motion. And well, guys, what's your full motion that we? All right, so we have a motion to accept CDE's recommendation for all the schools minus the 6 that I just listed. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Brazilla, a second.
So we have a motion and a second. Let me think for a second. Procedurally, making sure I got this right. So we can make that, yeah. All right, so further conversation? Questions? Commissioner Terry? Yep. If you've got questions, and this is this is definitely the time to ask, because we were talking about the items, or excuse me, about the recommendation minus those 6 schools, so we can have a full conversation right now. So questions, go right ahead.
I mean, I don't have a question, I have a comment.
Comments, go right ahead.
Okay. I actually want to speak against the motion. I'm just really concerned, and we brought this up before, we had an extensive conversation last time. I'm just really concerned about the process, transparency. I mean, we're talking about $1 billion right here, 100 plus schools. And we still don't really have an accurate account of where the money is going to, and is it getting to the students and the educators that serve them. Making sure the money is not going to out-of-state companies. And so I just want to flag that I'm still concerned. I've been concerned. Every meeting I talk about how concerned I am. And until we actually fix the process, we just have to admit that it's broken.
Thank you. Commissioner King?
Just to make sure to address that, I do think there is currently a mechanism in place, and that's the authorizer, right, to provide that oversight. So the authorizer, so what actually happens just in practice, everything is actually constantly reviewed. You're going through all of it, and while we may disagree with some of the vendors that are actually used, if it's legal, then it's legal. So it's up to the authorizer, it's up to the governing boards of those particular charter entities to make those determinations. So I do think there is a mechanism currently in place to ensure that abuse doesn't happen.
Commissioner Olmos.
I have to say that I also do have some concerns as well. Just again, the amount of material we had to review in a short amount of time. I had my admin print this out as about 2,000 pages. Again, very difficult to review. I don't have a staff to review it. I had to go through it myself as best I could. But just even catching some issues on there. For example, there was one charter school with about a $75 million budget. They had zero presented for their oversight. Which I don't think that's probably correct. And again, is in concern to oversight. For example, one authorizer has 30 kids enrolled in their district, yet they have a charter school with 3,200 ADA and a $40 million budget. For a district with 30 students, that's going to be very hard to provide oversight.
Commissioner Farland.
So I just want to remind folks that we have a limited review of the funding determination. We are not digging into areas that, as Dr. King mentioned, really are under the purview of oversight of the authorizer. I understand everyone's concerns, and you see all of the information that we post with these funding determinations. We post the whole entire form so folks can go through those forms. We ask questions, we ask follow-up questions of any charter school that we see anything that we think is not okay, or that realistically, it is a limited review just for funding determination processes. If something pops up that seems way illegal or out of line, we will contact the authorizer. But in general, CDE does have a limited review. We do not have the capacity, or I don't even think we have the legal ability to dig into every single charter school and, sort of through it with a fine-tooth comb. We do a very thorough job for what we have here. Some might say it's too thorough sometimes, but we try to catch everything we can. But a lot of the stuff that we see and that you point out here really are things that should be dealt with in the oversight process with a charter's authorizer. And, in terms of anything else, I mean, I get it. But both sides are saying the process is broken. It's not going to get fixed at the ACCS. You really need to go to the legislature and help develop a new process that's easier for non-classroom-based schools to get their funding, because we just are working with the old process we have in Ed Code and in regulations. And so I just want to be clear that it is a limited review. That we can't dig into every single one of these schools as deeply as some of you would like. So, thanks.
Commissioner Taylor.
And I wanted to echo that. I think, we talk a lot about local control in our state, that charter schools are authorized by a local school district or county office of education. They are the ones responsible for providing oversight, not this body, not CDE, to start digging into, is this the right vendor or is that the right vendor? In my mind, and what I read in the current statutes is that we're a local control state in terms of how our charter schools are authorized generally. And those kinds of conversations need to happen at the local level. So Dr. Olmos brought up, the school district with 30 students that's authorized, a charter school that's significantly larger, that is permitted under California Ed Code. And that school district is operating within that Ed Code, in my understanding. So I don't feel like it's our position to be making judgment on whether or not that is good or bad. And I think Commissioner Farland was saying this is a legislative issue, and if we as individuals, I guess, have issues with that, we could go to the legislature. But I think our job is fairly limited in our approach, is looking at these funding determinations and making that. So,
any other commissioners? Yes, coming right down this direction.
Yeah, so being one of the new guys, I get to claim that's my disclaimer. I'm new, so I'm trying to figure all of this out as we speak. But I guess I just want to, and thank you for your comment and your explanation. I appreciate that. And I appreciate your comments as well. I think one of the frustrations that I'm having and struggling with is that we are the ones determining the funding level, right? And so typically, at least in my world, when you're making that determination of funding, that's because you have full assurance and you have full confidence in the system that is presenting the information to you with which you're making a decision. And so I just want to say that I'm not there, but I do have a lot of questions, and I fully appreciate the fact that we say authorizers, that is where the accountability and oversight lies. But I think in reading through 141 of these things, what authorizers are, who they are, what the relationship is with the charter schools, everything is all over the place. And so I think we do need, I appreciate that it's not here, that we can't fix it, but somebody needs to fix it. We need to have a system that we can all feel confident in and feel as though that when corrections are needed to be made, that they are made. Just generally speaking, I don't want to go into pulling any particular ones out, but I would say generally speaking, it feels as though this has become almost an automatic formula-driven process where you hit the criteria, therefore you get. And while I understand that, it's a bit frustrating for me because what I'm looking for, and so on many of these, even when I kind of just use the reasonable approach. Would a reasonable person look at this information and have questions? And if that's the case, then I would expect that these folks that are putting forth their determination requests would at least explain a little bit. I mean, for example, there's one in particular that more than 200% reserve balance, right? If that were in my county, we would be having conversations with those districts, right? We would be saying, okay, there could be a very good explanation for it. But I don't know, because they didn't even take the time to fill out the mitigating. There's 3 simple boxes to fill out the mitigating circumstances. So what I would ask of all charters in the state, that when you're submitting this paperwork, look at through the lens of, is there any reasonable questions that might be out there, and address them just so that we have that information. On the flip side of that, so that would be, and I need to have full confidence that the authorizers of those districts have had those conversations and there is a plan. It could be for facilities. It could be because of all the influx of federal dollars that came in and state dollars for COVID. There could be reasonable explanations, but I just don't know because we're not provided that information by the charters. I think on the flip side of that, if we're going to say that authorizers are the mechanism by which all concerns are addressed, and I'm a big local control guy, so I appreciate your comments, then we need to really understand that they're not all the same. I mean, for example, there's one that has 7 charters before us today that has at least according to 22-23 data, has 94 students. So they have an enrollment of 94 in their district. But they have 7 non-classroom-based charters that they authorize, more than 3,000 students. And then about $9 million is coming back to the authorizer in services to those 7 schools. So now I'm having a struggle with, if the authorizer is the mechanism for accountability and oversight, but yet they're very small in capacity by their own, existence, but then are authorizing so many charters to serve a large area and then having a large amount of money coming back into them. Are they then conflicted in terms of that role? And I think those are the questions that need to be asked. What is the role of that authorizer? When does a conflict exist that by the case of that, and I'm sorry I'm going so long, but you're giving me the look, I'm sorry. What would be the circumstances that would conflict them in that role, and then what process? We always say that systems, you always get the results of they're perfectly designed to give you the results of the system, right? Well, clearly I think we need to have a conversation in the state about what that system looks like to do this work. And so thanks for letting me just spew some of my thoughts right now.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Walsh, can I?
I've got Commissioner Brazil after. I'm going to check again with Commissioner. Yes. And so, Erica, I'll let you share Commissioner Brazil, and then we're going to try and wrap this up because we have a lot more. So if you still feel compelled. I probably will. Okay. Well, we'll let you, if there's a compel. All right. So.
Well, I'll begin by saying I, too, am new to this. So, and in having looked at this 100 and some items and looking through them, it was very frustrating, and I echo, I think, the words of many who have already stated. However, when looking through the system that's in place, I kind of felt I don't have another choice other than to follow what is in place. Do I agree with the need for this system to be addressed and to be fixed? Absolutely. But I again, being new, perhaps I am not thinking of it in a more in-depth way, aside then from basically a formula that we're asked to follow. So I just wanted to share that because I think that's important.
So Commissioner Jones, and then I'll take a bite, and then if you're still feeling compelled. All right. So go right ahead, Erica.
I guess feeling compelled to respond. The thing is, we have had bad actors. That's true. That has happened within this system, and we haven't closed those loopholes. That's true. There are governing boards that are all over the place. That's true. So I think if we're looking at the system, and I get that we may not be the ones, but I'm going to keep saying it here until the ones hear what they need to hear, because again, the process is flawed. The process, and I agree with what my colleague here said about the authorizers. And we have actually asked for more information. We have. And there has been a gray area of whether we're even allowed to get more information. So again, just going to go on record. I know my colleague's going to respond. That's all.
All right. So I'll just simply say that one of the things I'm clear on is this notion of reasonable. So I appreciate you making that statement about reasonable expectations and a belief in the system. There's definitely work to be done there. And that is definitely the work of a body different than this one here. And so we are asked to take what we have and make a decision based on the process that is part of our purview. So knowing that you are still feeling compelled, I'll give you the final word, and then I am going to call the question.
I'll be fairly quick. First off, let me just say I appreciate the spirit of the conversation, like just being 100% honest. I would also offer that when those imbalances exist, that also speaks to the efficacy and the desire of the parents to go outside of that district, right? If you have a small district and you have a larger charter, that's saying something. And at the end of the day, as a parent, we get to make that choice. And so when there is those things that exist, I would offer more scrutiny for that district. I would also offer this other thing, and that is when we add more scrutiny to public charters, we're creating this inequity, right? Because remember, we're still talking about public schools. We're talking about balance. And so when we give charters less money, that means for that parent, you're saying my child deserves 30, 15%, whatever percent less to be educated with than their district counterparts. And so the only reason why I wanted to just address that is when we're thinking about the whole thing, understanding there's always flaws in the system, there are flaws in the district system, but this is currently the mechanism that we have. But I just wanted to address the imbalance because I don't think sometimes charter schools get enough credit for their creativity, and that's the reason why parents are sometimes going. And that's in no way a knock on the district, right? right? That district might be amazing. It's just the parent chose to do something different.
All right. So I have a motion to move the CDE recommendations forward as presented, minus the 6 schools that I mentioned earlier, number 33, 49, 50, 67, 135, and 141. I will now go ahead and take a vote. And so, Commissioner Brazil, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Commissioner Farland?
Aye.
Commissioner Fennell?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
No.
Commissioner King?
Aye.
Commissioner Olmos?
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes almost unanimously. And at this point, we're going to take item number 33. That is the one that I'm going to recuse myself on. I'm going to step outside. And Commissioner Taylor, if you'll run the vote for that item, and then I will come back in and reassume the chair. So question, all right, so you want to go, all right, so we are going to recess for 2 minutes? All right, we're going to recess for 2 minutes while Commissioner Taylor comes to take my chair if you would like. And I'm basically stalling for time because someone else is having a Mother Nature call. So
I'm good.
it's a small child making a demand. All right, so. Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to stay right here. Yes.
A roll call vote on item number 33, which is a determination of funding for a school listed on here as charter number 0945. And I would welcome any comment from the board on on this item in particular.
I think we need a motion before we can.
Sorry. Is there a motion from someone on the board?
Brazil, I'll vote to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Brazil, second by Dr. King. Any questions on this item for staff? Hearing none, I will call the question. Helio Brazil?
Aye.
Stephanie Farland?
Aye.
Todd Fennell?
Aye.
Erica Jones?
No.
Derek King?
Aye.
Steve Olmos?
Aye.
And Matt Taylor votes aye, and Commissioner Walsh has recused himself. The motion passes. Then we can bring Commissioner Walsh back in. Welcome back, sir.
All right, so moving along. This time, I believe Derek, Commissioner King, will be recusing yourself for schools 49 and 50. All right, and for those schools, I'll entertain a motion.
Commissioner Taylor motions the staff recommendation.
A motion by Commissioner Taylor on the recommendations, and second.
Commissioner Brazil, I'll second.
So Commissioner Brazil, a second. I'll go ahead and take a vote. Commissioner Brazil.
Aye.
Commissioner Farland.
Aye.
Commissioner Fennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
No.
Commissioner Olmos.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
And I vote aye, and that it will be an abstention, so motion passes. So if we'll bring Commissioner King back in. Someone could just open the door for him and let him know it's okay to come back. It's lonely out there. Good, catch him before he heads out to grab coffee. And Commissioner Brazil, I believe, will take on your school number 67. And so, Commissioner, for school number 67, I will entertain a motion. So Commissioner King moves that we move forward on CDE recommendation. I believe that's the clarity of the motion. Yeah. All right. And is there a second?
Commissioner Taylor seconds.
All right. So Taylor. And then we'll take the vote. And again, same order. Commissioner Farland.
Aye.
Commissioner Fennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
No.
Commissioner King.
Aye.
Commissioner Olmos.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor. And I vote aye. Motion passes. So if someone will let Commissioner Brazil back in, and then Commissioner Olmos. You would, I'm assuming, yes. All right. You leave your tome behind. That giant book. All right, and for schools 135 and 141, I will take a motion.
Commissioner Brazil, I'll move to approve.
So Commissioner Brazil, and then a second by Commissioner King. And again, we're moving, the motion is to move CDE recommendations forward. And so the vote, Commissioner Brazil.
Aye.
Commissioner Farland.
Aye.
Commissioner Fennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones. Commissioner King.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes. All right, thank you. So we'll bring him back in also. All right. All right. So we are now moving on to item number 2, consideration of requests for determination of funding with reasonable basis or mitigating circumstances. Let's see. So McKenna, if you are ready to present for the Charter Schools Division.
All right. Good morning again. So item 2 consists of non-classroom-based determination of funding requests with the consideration of mitigating circumstances. So as stated in the item, Education Code Section 47634.3A1 provides the following. Regulations shall specify that non-classroom-based instruction is conducted for the instructional benefit of pupils and is substantially dedicated to that function. In determining the amount of funding to be allocated to a charter school, the state board shall consider, among other factors, the amount of the charter school's total budget expended on certificated employee salaries and benefits and on school sites, as well as the teacher-to-pupil ratio in the school. This section of Education Code also states that for the 2003-2004 fiscal year and each fiscal year thereafter, the amount of funding determined by the state board pursuant to this section shall not be more than 70% of the unadjusted amount to which a charter school would otherwise be entitled, unless the state board determines that a greater or lesser amount is appropriate based on the criteria outlined in section 47634.2A1. So regulations provide criteria and outline the eligibility requirements for specific levels of funding for charter schools offering non-classroom-based instruction. These requirements were addressed in the previous item and are also illustrated on the table in this slide. For charter schools that do not meet the requirements and criteria for their requested level of funding, regulations state that the Advisory Commission may find a reasonable basis, also referred to as mitigating circumstances, by which to make an other recommendation in order to allow non-classroom-based charter schools to receive a higher percentage of funding than it qualifies for based on its expenditures. So this item specifically considers determination of funding requests with mitigating circumstances for 34 charter schools. The schools presented in this item do not meet the requirements to qualify for 100% funding for non-classroom-based instruction. Specifically, based on their reported expenditures, 17 schools qualify for 85% funding for their non-classroom-based instruction, 13 schools qualify for 70% funding, and 4 schools qualify for 0% or no funding for their non-classroom-based instruction. After reviewing all schools' funding determination requests, mitigating circumstances requests, and any additional or clarifying information provided by the school, the department proposes to recommend that the state board approve 26 charter schools' mitigating circumstances requests and approve their determination of funding requests for a higher level of funding than for which they qualify, and this is specified in Attachment 1. The department also proposes to recommend that the state board deny 8 charter schools' mitigating circumstances requests, but approve their determination of funding requests at the level of funding for which they qualify, and this is also specified in Attachment 1. When considering mitigating circumstances, the department is guided by regulations and considers the unique or exceptional circumstances of the charter school. This section of regulations provides specific instances for which mitigating circumstances may be considered. And these instances may include, but are not limited to, information provided by the charter school on its funding determination form, documented data regarding the individual circumstances of the charter school, the size of the charter school, and the number of years the charter school has been in operation. This section also states that this commission shall give serious consideration of full funding to charter schools with less than a total of 100 units of prior year second period average daily attendance and charter schools that are in their first year of operation. So regulations also permits the department to ask charter schools for additional information in order to make possible a more detailed review or to develop a reasonable basis for a recommendation other than those prescribed by regulations. Pursuant to this section, the department requests and considers additional information of charter schools, which may include charter schools' excess reserves, as well as their previous requests for the consideration of mitigating circumstances. With specific regard to charter schools' excess reserves, California Code of Regulations Title V, Section 11963.3 A5F states that reserves in excess of the greater of $50,000 or 5% of total expenditures may be allowed for economic uncertainties or long-term expenditures such as capital projects if the excess reserves are satisfactorily explained. Pursuant to this section, during its consideration of mitigating circumstances requests, the department does ask for additional information of charter schools regarding their excess reserves. The department's review and consideration of this additional information is limited to what is provided by the charter schools themselves. For funding determination requests submitted with mitigating circumstances, the department reviews the level of funding as well as the funding period requested by the school, the level of funding for which the school actually qualifies based on its reported expenditures and regulations, the school's claim for mitigating circumstances. Specifically, the department considers if the school's claim is one-time in nature, includes exceptional expenses such as for facilities, includes the consideration of restricted funds, and or any other unique or individual circumstances. The department relies on charter schools to submit information to support their claim and evaluates the information provided by the schools. Additionally, the department looks at the school's total reserves and if the school has provided a satisfactory explanation or plans for its reserves if they are in excess, as well as the school's previous requests for mitigating circumstances. So here, the department is considering if the school has a demonstrated history of failing to meet the regulatory criteria for funding for its non-classroom-based instruction. And finally, the department considers any other information submitted by the school with its funding determination request. So regarding this review process, the department does note the following. Proposed recommendations for the approval of mitigating circumstances do not mean the approval for 100% funding for charter schools' non-classroom-based instruction. Proposed recommendations for the denial of mitigating circumstances do not mean a denial of any funding. And schools whose funding determinations are approved at a level different than what is requested may submit a funding determination reconsideration request pursuant to regulations. Specifically, regulations state that a school that wishes to seek a higher or lower determination of funding shall do so by filing a new determination of funding request during the effective period of their funding determination. So in the previous item, I discussed the department's practice for recommending funding periods. For charter schools requesting the consideration of mitigating circumstances, it is the department's practice to recommend funding periods of 2 years, regardless of the number of times a charter school has renewed their funding determination with the state board. So a period of 2 years allows the department to timely revisit schools' funding determinations and ensure that they are meeting the requirements outlined in regulations for their approved level of funding. So in conclusion, the department proposes to recommend that the state board approve 26 charter schools' mitigating circumstances requests and approve their determination of funding requests at a higher level of funding for which they qualify for 2 years. Pursuant to regulations and upon its review of the information submitted by the schools, the department finds a reasonable basis for these schools to be approved for a higher level of funding despite not meeting the regulatory criteria. Additionally, the department proposes to recommend that the state board deny 8 charter schools mitigating circumstances requests and approve their determination of funding requests at the level of funding for which they qualify pursuant to regulations for 2 years. The department does not find a reasonable basis for these schools to be approved for a higher level of funding than for which they qualify. And to clarify regarding this part of the recommendation, the department is not proposing that these schools have their funding cut or that they receive no funding for their non-classroom-based instruction. Rather, the department is proposing to recommend that the state board approve these schools' funding determinations at the level for which they qualify pursuant to regulations. Thank you for your consideration of this item. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, so once again, we'll begin with clarifying questions based on information that's just been shared. And so, Commissioner Jones.
Is it possible in future that the CDE can add a rationale for approving or denying the request for mitigating circumstances?
That is included in the item for each school.
Okay. And my next question is, for shared school employees, how are they accounted in the PTR?
My understanding is that those employees were counted as, I'm sorry, let me just go through my notes. Let's see. Okay, so the department did ask for clarification of those schools who have those shared employees and found that those employees are not counted for more than 1 FTE.
Commissioner King?
First, I have a comment in terms of process. If it's possible going forward, because when I'm looking at the 26 versus the 8, they're kind of 2 different things, right? So of the 26, you're actually recommending a funding determination higher than they actually qualify with the 8. That's not the case. So going forward, if we can separate those, I think it might be better for process. The other question I have with respect to due process for these schools is, can you share with us when the timeline, all those types of things that the school was actually communicated with to determine even where the funding level was higher and or just communicating what the CDE's recommendation was going to be?
So these charter schools were required to submit a funding determination renewal request by February 1st. So once we receive the funding determinations, department staff does review them and has a back and forth exchange with charter schools to ask for additional or clarified information in order to make their recommendation. And then the agenda is posted 10 days prior to the meeting, and information about public comment and if schools want to speak to their specific request is again provided on that agenda.
My reasoning for asking is because when I look at there are 1, 2, 3, there's 4 that actually are submitted a response, and so just for clarification, you're saying all of them had been given the opportunity, but only the 4 took the opportunity to respond to it.
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Is that it, Judge King? All right. So Commissioner Taylor.
Yes, Amy Kenna, thank you for your presentation. This is great. Question around reconsideration. So can you explain it again how reconsideration would work in these cases? So there's a 2-year, what you're recommending is a 2-year funding determination. How and when could a school ask for reconsideration in that period?
So a school would request a reconsideration of their funding determination during the effective period of the funding determination that they are asking to be reconsidered.
So would that be effective? So if a school were to ask for a reconsideration of this recommendation for the 23-24 school year, could that be honored, or is the motion that we would be considering today set in stone for 23-24? And then it would be for 24-25 that they'd be asking for reconsideration.
So charter schools can ask for a reconsideration, and apologies if I'm not understanding your question correctly, but in this item, we are proposing funding determination levels for fiscal years 2023-24 and 2024-25. So pursuant to regulations, a charter school may request that their funding level for that entire period or for just one of the years included in that period to be reconsidered for a different level of funding.
So I think I'm kind of following up on Commissioner King's question about due process. If a school were to bring additional information to the CDE at a later point in time, the CDE could then reconsider its recommendation and bring it back to the commission to potentially allow for a change in funding status.
Yes, that is correct.
So it's not, this is not forever. If there is additional information out there, to allow for due process, if a school didn't understand those timelines, there's an opportunity for fixing that.
Yes, that is correct. And actually, the third item on this agenda does consider a reconsideration of a funding determination request.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, could you put the slide back up that talked about the 17 schools, 13 and the 4? You have that slide available? So again, Commissioner, I wanted to bring this up so Commissioner King, you can see that we do not have to take the vote all as one. We have options for how, just as we've done previous to this. So we can keep that in mind. I just thought that would be one way to help us sort through things a little bit easier. So we've got Commissioner Olmos and then Fino, and then we'll keep moving, and then we'll see what other callers we have for public comment. So Commissioner Olmos, there's a question again about clarification.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions. Again, just looking at what was provided, for example, I see the ones, again, for what we had to review and, again, the justification to increasing to 100%. But then the ones that are deny, I don't see them in the packet. So, for example, on my packet, I have the first two, and then the denials are not included for justification of why they were denied. So I don't see that in my packet. And then again, for example, just a clarification on, for example, here's one charter that I'm looking at. And so the following bullet summarizes the school's mitigating circumstance request. And it says, second bullet is inability to fill teacher vacancies due to statewide teacher shortages. Yet they went from 65 FTE to 100 FTE from one year to the next. So adding 35 FTE seems like they're not having an issue of filling vacancies.
Would you mind clarifying which charter school you're referring to?
This one in particular was California Innovation Career Academy. And again, per their application, they went from 1,100 ADA to 2,000 ADA in 1 year and increased their FTE from 65 to 100, but they listed inability to fill teacher vacancies due to statewide teacher shortages.
So as stated in the item, that was only one part of the school's mitigating circumstances request. The other parts that they also cited, the CDE found to be reasonable in terms of mitigating circumstances, which is why we are proposing to recommend the approval of their mitigating circumstances.
And why aren't the charters that were denied, why didn't we get a review of them?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand. So the CDE did provide its analysis of the school's mitigating circumstances requests, as well as their explanation of the reserves in the item. So each school kind of has their own section in the item where we do a little bit of a deeper explanation or analysis of our recommendation.
Commissioner Olmos, as you continue to look for that, do you mind if I go ahead and allow Commissioner Fennell? Okay, so Commissioner Fennell.
Yeah, so my question is a process question similar to Commissioner Olmos. So I don't recall seeing either the rationale or the explanation of why they weren't the ones that aren't being recommended. We don't have those? Okay. And so I'm just going to choose the one that's on the top of public comment that was submitted for written public comment. It's Castle Rock. And so I guess I just want to, and thank you for your explanation of the process you go through and how you evaluate whether there's reasonable justification for mitigating circumstances. But as I read the Castle Rock, just as an example, it seems like that they raise a lot of valid arguments in terms of the mitigating circumstances. And so I just want to know what went into the thinking to determine that they would not be approved Did you have this information that they submitted as public comment as part of your evaluation and analysis, or is this new information? Because again, just now processing the information over the last few days, I can say that reading the Castle Rock justification seems reasonable, and it seems like they should be funded at 100%.
Again, so the information that was submitted by schools via public comment, that is new information to the department. That was not submitted with their initial funding determination request, and so it was not included in our analysis for this item.
And just as a reminder, we're starting to go down the road of things that weren't actually already presented. So I want to pull us back up just a little bit. And so again, any questions regarding what has been presented? All right, so at this point, we're going to take public comment, and then we'll come back for those deeper conversations. So let me go back to my script, get myself on the correct line as well. We've done a lot of scrolling on computers today. So at this point, are there any public commenters on the phone for item number 2? The operator will notify callers when it is their turn to provide public comment, and public comment is limited to 1 minute per speaker. So do we have anyone on the line?
Yes, Commissioner, we do have one caller. Good morning, caller. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
My name is Bill Dobson. I'm the Interim Executive Director from Motivated Youth Academy, number 1628, item 2, attachment 34 for you. Motivated Youth Academy, or MYA, has an enrollment of 251 students and has been a dashboard alternative school status community of practice since July 2019. MYA is only one of 3 DOS schools in its service area that is primarily virtual, meaning students get the benefit of in-person support from a credentialed teacher as well as the flexibility a virtual program offers. MYA teachers go into the students' communities weekly to meet at public locations such as libraries, community centers, or tribal halls. Our focus is creating equitable access to consistently strong outcomes for all students, paying special attention to the social-emotional needs of historically marginalized populations. I urge you to recommend full funding for MYA so the at-promise and opportunity youth we serve continue to have equitable access to public education and the opportunity to earn a high school diploma. Thank you.
That's time. Thank you.
All right. Do we have anyone who was ready to deliver public comment for item number 2 here in the audience?
Well, actually, Commissioner, we do have one caller that just came in.
So we'll go ahead and take one more caller, and then we'll move to the public comment. It's within the room.
Good morning, caller. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Hi, my name is Sarah Smith, and I'm the superintendent of the T.I.M.E E-Learning Academy. Chiba is a non-classroom-based charter school here in rural northern the city of Red Bluff. I apologize for not being there in person for this day. I just wanted to share a couple of items in relation to the factors that have contributed to us being here today regarding our funding determination. Staffing challenges, as has been mentioned, we've had multiple certificated and classified positions that remain vacant or partially filled. In 21-22 was the first year we accepted Title I funding, and that, in addition to the COVID pandemic, really posed a kind of a perfect storm for our charter. Even with our intentional planning, with those increased one-time revenue streams, we were not able to meet some of the expenditures that we had projected. What I want the Commission to know and fully understand is that we have been working diligently to ensure that we are not here again. We've been working to increase our FTEs. We've conducted a salary study that are proposing increases to both certificated and classified schedules.
Time.
A one-time off-schedule payment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. We will move on then to public comment within the room. And again, we're going to do our best to hold you to that 1 minute time limit. So do we have anyone in the room ready to speak?
We do, Commissioner. I'll read off the first 10 names. Please line up and state your name and affiliation for the record when you present your public comment. May I please have Jeff Rice, Jody Jones, Patrick Ratcliffe, Cynthia Rochelle, Cynthia Razor-Jevons, Brenda Congo, Timothy Smith, Jeff Slayton, Jeff Napier, and Stephanie Agert. Thank you.
Jeff Rice with A+. I can't think of a more unique, extreme, extraordinary, one-time circumstance in our lifetime justifying a reasonable basis than the COVID pandemic, whose unprecedented consequences severely affected and continue to affect to varying degrees all public schools. The consequences largely cited for mitigating circumstances all tied to the consequences of the pandemic, including maintaining higher than usual reserves until the uncertainty better stabilized. As a result, I encourage the ACCS to consider recommending a 2-year 100% funding determination for all schools in this agenda item. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I am Jody Jones. I am here representing South Sutter and Sky Mountain Charter Schools. I am disheartened that we have to come here today to plead for the full funding necessary to support student learning. We have worked in good faith with the Charter Schools Division of CDE for 17 years on our funding determinations for both of these schools and received 100% funding. We did receive a few questions which we swiftly replied to, receiving no response, confirmation, or request for additional information. We received no indication that our funding determination with mitigating circumstances is going to be denied. I understand that the ACCS is not responsible for the recommendations by CDE staff, but with such broken lines of communication, we are forced to come here to seek your support. I urge the ACCS to overrule the recommendations of CDE staff for South Sutter and Sky Mountain and recommend 100% funding.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I'm Patrick Ratcliffe, also with South Sutter and Sky Mountain Charter Schools. Our schools have 17 years of responsible financial management, clean audits, and 100% funding determinations in all prior submissions. The documentation from CDE staff states that we met the mitigating circumstance requirements for 100% funding, and yet based on criteria not in the statute, staff at CDE are claiming we are financially unsustainable. We strive to be good stewards of public funds and meet the unique needs of our students. Part of that responsibility is to ensure that our school is financially stable, especially now in the light of the pending threat of economic recession. Cash reserves allowed these schools to weather the 2008-10 recession without laying off employees while maintaining salary levels and, most importantly, our service levels for our students. We intend to do the same through the next financial crisis through our current reserves. Reducing funding levels because of these reserves would force us to seek high-cost financing.
Time.
Thank you.
Good morning, members of ACCS. My name is Cynthia Rachel, and I am also with South Sutter and Sky Mountain Charter Schools. The governor has stated that these one-time funds were meant to be spent over multiple years. We even had to write plans sometime during the last school year to, in the future, be able to spend the funds. So we're also looking at a need and issues with statewide educator shortages, and we're hearing from both districts, charters, unions, all of them calling for a higher base salary. So those are things that we have planned to use this money for. The school year on which this determination was based was the first year post-COVID where schools across the state were struggling to determine how to best meet the ever-changing needs of our students while navigating unprecedented staffing shortages and vacancies. We're specifically requesting 100% funding for only 2 years because we understand that this is an anomaly in our long history of fiscal solvency, and we intend to resolve all of the one-time funding issues at that time. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair and Commission members, my name is Cynthia Reiser-Jevons, and I serve Levita Charter School as Board Secretary. Since the beginning of our small country K-12 school over 20 years ago, Levita has consistently met funding determination goals. Last year, the school had several unexpected challenges that resulted in the inability to reach that goal. Last spring, 2 of our 7 teachers exited for different reasons, causing instructional expenditures to be lower than usual. A county-wide teacher shortage has left 200 positions unfilled. Additionally, a special ed legal complaint required unexpected legal support and fees. And finally, our business manager of many years became ill, so restricted resources and funding determination coding and percentages were not tracked well before the business manager passed away. We hope that you will take these special, challenging circumstances under full consideration and see fit to recommend full funding for our school. Thank you.
Chairman, Commissioners, I'm Jeff Slayton, Principal of Castle Rock Charter School. On our original funding determination form, we incorrectly categorized EPA funds as restricted one-time funds. We understand that these funds have no bearing on our ability to reach our 80% threshold for full funding. That's a correction we made. Speaking of the 80%, if not for one-time funds such as educator effectiveness, ELO grant, and A through G completion grants, we would have made our full funding qualifications. While we understand our fund balance is high, it does contain at least 1/3 restricted funds. And we do have plans to spend that down in the next couple of years. Moving forward, just Castle Rock respectfully requests 100% funding for the next 2 years. Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, my name is Jeff Napier. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Business for Delaware County Unified School District and COE. We're a single here on behalf of Castle Rock. I'd like to just emphasize that the EPA error was a fiscal services error that was made. We have a new fiscal director. Castle Rock's issue in this has to do all with one-time funding. The one-time funding as mitigation factors has driven up the reserves with one-time revenues and also offsetting ongoing revenues that have dropped into reserves. And given the three criteria, the 40%, the 80%, and the 25-to-1 ratio, had Castle Rock not received one-time revenues in 21-22, they would have met all three criteria. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commission members. My name is Brenda Congo, and I'm with T.I.M.E High Desert Academy. We've been servicing Adelanto in the high desert of Southern California for 10 years, and I respectfully ask that the Commission recommends that T.I.M.E receive 100% of its funding. Mitigating circumstances was submitted, and we do have reserves that we are continuously trying to spend through teacher hiring. We have hired quite a bit, and our student population has also grown substantially since COVID. The height of this year, we were servicing 737 students. Pre-COVID, we were about 250. We've grown from 16 staff members in October of 21 to now 53. We have 30 credentialed teachers. And we intend to continue hiring. We just hired 2 credentialed teachers this week for next school year. We are a DOS school that just recertified with 90% students qualifying in one or more indicators.
Thank you. That's time. Thank you.
I'm Timothy Smith, co-founder of T.I.M.E High Desert Academy. We are a small DAS alternative school in Adelanto in the High Desert community. And we are very happy with Brenda and her team. They've done a fabulous job in servicing students in that community. And I got to hand it to us for being able to service students when a lot of other folks would not allow these students to have an educational option. So we're very grateful for this chance that we've been able to service students. We did submit a mitigating circumstance thoughtful explanation, and we believe that there were some extenuating circumstances that were part of our not being able to meet the requirements or the ratios. We do have a good relationship with our authorizer. Adelanto School District is very happy with what we're doing in our community, and we would respectfully request that you reconsider this 70% allocation. Our students and parents are doing 100% of the work. We would like to get 100% of the funding for the work we're doing with these kids. And thank you for this. Have a good day.
Good morning, Commission. My name's Laura Blackman. I'm with Shasta View Academy. Presenting a question for you. In the chart that was presented with the board agenda, our school was shown to get 100% funding for 2 years, and now questioning that the chart is showing nobody is getting 100% in this category.
Commissioners, I'm Stephanie Eggert of Family Partnership Charter School. I hope the memo I sent last week is in front of you, and I apologize it did not adequately address our prior submissions, mitigating circumstances, but that document is supporting a reconsideration of 100% funding for our charter. I want to shift now to student successes. After 27 years in non-charter districts, FP's job appealed to me, knowing an alternative program is better for some. 15 years ago, I took in my nephew on the verge of dropping out. At orientation, I'll never forget what the principal said. Independent study is not necessarily easier. You set goals and work hard to stay on track. In the end, he graduated with his cohort by making up an 8th grade retention, and he's now an aviation mechanic. Charters offer flexibility and alternatives, and I share about LG. He came this fall to us with 10 credits as a sophomore, having to work the fields by day. He needed program flexibility, schoolwork at night. He's now making academic progress. As the new executive director, thank you.
May I please have the following 10 individuals come to the mic? Zach Wolf, Corey Kavanaugh, John Limo, Tadios Bellig, Gigi Lenz, Kaina Collins, Eric Premack, Jason Sitmore, Laura Kuhn, Heidi Gasca, and Jeff Soria. I'm sorry, Joe Soria.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Thank you for allowing us the time to speak this morning. My name is Zach Wolf, and I'm here on behalf of T.I.M.E High Desert Academy. Per my email public comment last week, I kindly ask that you consider a full 100% funding request for T.I.M E based on their mitigating circumstances. Our team works very hard with school administration to ensure funding determination compliance, and if the school would have been able to budget able to hire the budgeted teaching positions timely, they would have met all requirements. Echoing what Commissioner Fennell said about asking questions and providing detail to the CDE, I too ask that the CDE staff take the necessary time to converse with charter school administrators to gain additional insight prior to recommending reduced funding. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Corey Kavanaugh. I'm also in support of T.I.M E High Desert and ask the Commission reconsider the CDE's recommendation for 70% funding. T.I.M E did not meet the 40% requirement, but I think it's important to note that they did meet the 80% requirement. And the 40% requirements that we failed to meet was more of a basis of not being able to hire experienced teachers. As Brenda mentioned, we were able to hire a lot of teachers, but they happen to be first, second CTE type teachers, which do not have the same salary budget expenditures that a experienced 5-10 year teacher meet. And that's why we didn't meet the 40%, but we did meet the 80%, and I think that's important to note. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is John Lemo. I also am here on behalf of T.I.M E High Desert Academy. I provided a written comment letter that I trust you have received and reviewed. It wasn't posted when I last checked. Again, as you've heard from others from T.I.M E had an increase in enrollment of more than 145%, and like many schools, had difficulty hiring teachers, particularly the more experienced teachers, as Mr. Kavanaugh has pointed out. And as to reserves, in addition to my comment letter, I just wanted to point out that a substantial portion of those reserves actually it's receivable. It's actually not cash. So yes, there actually is a reasonable basis here to make a recommendation for full funding instead of the 70% for 2 years. So we ask that you make that recommendation. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chair and Commissioners. My name is Dr. Balai. I am a board president with T.I.M E High Desert Academy. I'm also an educator and an advocate for educational equity for historically underserved students, and I'm very proud of serving on the board of T.I.M E Academy in terms of providing leadership and successful academic programs to historically underserved communities, especially in Southern California area. So I'm respectfully requesting all of you to reconsider the funding cut and provide 100% funding to T.I.M E Academy and other successful schools. Thank you so much.
Hello, Commissioners. Gigi Lenz here on behalf of Motivated Youth Academy. My academy has seen significant growth this year and today has a total enrollment of 264 students. My academy just finished a mid-cycle review of 6-year WASC accreditation. My academy has a primarily virtual model where students meet in person with credentialed teachers, as well as having the flexibility of accessing coursework and receiving support through virtual platforms. A unique feature of my academy is that our students go into the communities where students live and meet with them one-on-one once per week to provide support. Teachers and students meet in a variety of public locations, and even met in parks during the pandemic, in which they were able to keep our doors open during that uncertain time. In-person meetings allow teachers and students not only to provide support to teachers and students not only academically, but provide social emotional support and connect them with resources, which is the key to serving students from historically underserved communities. In addition, a new position. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ACCS Commissioners. My name is Kaina Collins, and I'm a veteran charter educator representing the California Teachers Association. As highlighted in my earlier comments, we must express our continued concerns with this broken process that opens the door to bad actors just like the A3 charters and other groups who have taken advantage of the loopholes to steal hundreds of millions of dollars. You are being asked to review and recommend 35 funding determinations with mitigating circumstances to the SBE with no clear rationale for each recommendation. Just like in item 1, some NCBs have 0% in reserve, and some have reserves that are over 100%. A few of the NCBs, such as Sky Mountain and South Southern Charter, have staff sharing agreements across them, and it is unclear how this really impacts their PTR. Some of the NCBs have governance issues, with only 1 or 2 board members. As always, CTA looks forward to working with you to fix this broken process. Thank you.
Eric Bremack with the Charter Schools Development Center. We're very concerned with the bases that most of these sit on. Of the 17 recommended for cut, by my count, 10 are being recommended because their spending is quote-unquote unsustainable. In fact, I don't think there's any way for CDE staff to know whether they are or are not sustainable. I spoke with several of these schools over the past week, and all of them were acutely aware of the phenomenon of spending one-time money on ongoing staff and had plans specifically to deal with that issue. Several others had just had their mitigation reasons denied out of hand without any reason. One school had a large special education legal settlement and due process claim. An unfortunate thing that none of us like to have happen, but I'm guessing that all of you up there who work in school administration have dealt with that once or twice. This particular school, it was once in 21 years, pretty good track record. I just don't think you have the basis here to make the recommended funding cuts, and the law actually requires if you provide less, if you recommend less funding, that you have good reasons for that to justify it. Thank you.
Jason Sittimer, Managing Director at Charter Impact, here to advocate for Motivated Youth Academy. Cutting the funding for Motivated Youth Academy would cause irreparable damage and not allow the school to achieve its programmatic and academic goals. Last fiscal year, the school's financials were not properly managed due to a lack of non-classroom-based experience by the school's prior support organization, which caused the school to miss their spending thresholds. Motivated Youth Academy's financials are now being appropriately supported by Charter Impact, and the school will not require mitigating circumstances in the future due to improved tracking and industry experience. Motivated Youth Academy provides students with an alternative to the traditional school model. Hindering Motivated Youth Academy's funding would stunt their growth and lower the quality education they are providing to their 250 students and all future students, many of whom face significant barriers in accessing public education that effectively serves their unique needs. I implore you to recommend 2 years of full funding for this school. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commission members. My name is Heidi Gaska. I'm the Executive Director of Excel Academy Charter Schools. Thank you for your time today. I'm here to request the reconsideration of the CDE recommendation of 85% to 100% funding for Excel Academy. We fell above the 40% and just 3% below the 80% threshold. We've never been denied in the past. Excel Academy was one of just 11 non-classroom-based schools that was named a 2023 California Distinguished School. In fact, we were the only school to be given this honor in the entire high desert. As a 2023 California Distinguished School, we would like to continue to educate students who attend one of the top 356 schools acknowledged for closing the achievement gap and achieving exceptional student performance by State Superintendent Tony Thurmond. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for one-time extraordinary circumstances. The timing of the required SB 740 filing artificially inflated our reserves, and the reality is that we did not have access to the necessary funds during the 21-22 school year to fulfill our plan. I ask that you reconsider based on the chaos of the unknown between the hold harmless, in which we took on 78 students and educated them with no funding. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Joe Serrera from Excel Academy Charter School. I'm here to provide further context on the California Department of Education for the proposed denial of our mitigating circumstances. Our situation can be further explained during 2021, where we have to keep our doors open and take out a loan to continue receiving and providing education to our students. Furthermore, we received a PPP loan in 2021, but it was forgiven in 21-22, so the auditors recorded it as a revenue, which made us go under the 80% threshold. Also, part of our ending reserve is $419,000 in restricted funds, and also part of that reserve are also used to pay for the loan that we have. So, considering all of those, we are about 14% reserve, and we're going to be using that to pay back some of the teachers that took the furlough days and in salary freeze during that time. Thank you.
Laura Kerr with the California Charter... Nope. Laura Kerr with the Charter Schools Development Center. New job, new year. Big cuts hurt kids and students and families. We urge you to recommend 100% funding for all schools, as the law requires you to do. The law mandates that recommendations for cuts must be backed by substantive justifications, not just generic, declarative, or out-of-hand ones. Specifically, the law says if the recommended percentage is lower than the requested percentage, then the recommendation to the state board shall include reasons justifying the reduction, and if appropriate, describe how any deficiencies or problems may be addressed by the charter school. CSDC does not believe that the CDE's recommendations provide such reasons, nor do they describe how the deficiencies or the problems may be addressed. Absent such substantive reasons and or descriptions, ACCS is not in a position to recommend cuts.
And at this time, I see no one else ready to share public comment. So we will move into our phase of deliberation. So commissioners, questions, comments as we figure out this process, or excuse me, as we figure out our decisions. So Commissioner King, sorry.
So my comment relates to what's in the statute as unique and exceptional. COVID 100% satisfies unique and exceptional. What's troubling to me is as I'm listening to seasoned charter operators, even one was a distinguished school, others 15 years, 27 years, 28 years, and we're going to further penalize them because they received one-time funding that has a sunset in some cases of 2025. Right? And so to me, it further exacerbates the inequity. So I believe that the most appropriate thing that we can do in this case is 2 years at 100% to allow it to be able to resolve itself. Because again, satisfying the unique and exceptional part of the statute seems to be pretty clear. COVID, in a lot of cases, whether it was the death of a person, the inability to hire, the one-time funding, the grants, et cetera, seems to me to meet that threshold.
All right, we'll just work our way right around. Go right ahead, Commissioner Olmos.
Yeah, just looking at the, again, recommendations, again, I'm a little concerned where it seems like it's just, if we have an approval for 100%, we have an approval for 85%, we have a denial at 85%, we have a denial for 70%. So again, it just seems like, again, I'm not sure, I'm still unclear on the criteria that was used to make those decisions on the mitigating circumstances. But again, when we look at that, we know that COVID impacted a lot of things. But again, just knowing that a lot of work went into this. I didn't have a lot of time to review everything. I don't have all the background on the mitigating circumstances. Again, I'm really going to have to rely on the staff who did all the work into this and to do the analysis of the mitigating circumstances. Because again, I didn't have appropriate time to review everything and know what went into it.
Commissioner Farland, did you have anything?
I would just want to clarify that the department isn't suggesting cuts for charter schools. This is the qualified amount of funding that these schools actually qualify for. So we're not going in and saying you get cut because of reasons A, B, and C. We're following regs. These schools qualify for a lesser amount than 100%. This process allows them to give us their best information as to why they should get that 100%. We apply the regulations when we review these and the additional information that we ask for from schools. Obviously, this commission can do what it wants. The state board can vote the way it likes. But it really is disingenuous to call these cuts because that's not what they are. The law does not automatically assume that everybody gets 100%. They actually have qualified requirements in law for 0, 70, 85, and 100. And that's what schools qualify for. Majority of schools get 100%. Like 98% of schools we've ever approved on this dais and at the state board get 100%. So I just want to say that that is not the way where we're coming from. We're not thinking about cuts to these schools. This is what they qualify for.
I'll hold off to my comments for just a second. So, Commissioner Brazil.
My only comments are based on, one-time funds, which I believe are a curse, and especially as a superintendent of a school district, small district, one-time money really is an issue that we're all facing, regardless of how we look at this. So I, much like Dr. King, completely agree that if there has ever been a time in the world that, like COVID, it certainly is a time to kind of reflect and look at perhaps having some kind of a recommendation that's fitting to the needs of that environment.
Commissioner Jones.
I'm sure I'm going to sound like a broken record today. I'm still not happy with the process. I still think it's flawed. Loopholes still exist. And we've got to get this right. So I totally understand. We all went through the pandemic. We all, and that was set a lot of folks back, right? Collectively surviving a pandemic in itself is huge. We all went through that. And though we did get more information, I still don't feel we're getting enough information to really be able to make sure that we are making the best decisions in the most transparent process possible. So I'm going to stand by this. I know I'm standing on principle today. It's okay if I'm the only one standing on principle today, but I'm gonna keep saying the process is flawed. We have to fix it.
Commissioner Fennell.
Yeah, thank you. And I think we all agree that there needs to be improvements to the system. But earlier today, item 1, we approved 141 funding determinations, for the most part based on formula. They hit the targets, they get funded. And I expressed my concern about that then, but at the end of the day, and that was with little or no concern for what is actually happening on the ground with kids and families. And so, that's a part of the broken system that probably gives me the greatest grief, right? Is that we know we have tremendous charter programs that are doing wonderful things with kids and families. We have others that need improvement, and getting to that point and that level of understanding, I think, is what we need to have a system that helps us do that. But having said that, I'm prepared to make a motion. I don't know if you want me to hold off until we hear from the rest of the commission, or
completely your choice.
I'd like to move that we fund all of those listed in item 2 at 100% for 2 years.
So we have a motion for 100% for 2 years from Commissioner Fennell and a second from Commissioner King. So we'll move to further conversations and questions. Commissioner Taylor.
And I support Commissioner Fennell's recommendation. I do think I was reading through the the CDE instructions this morning, and it says regulations specify that mitigating circumstances may include but are not limited to, and the first bullet is one-time or unique or exceptional expenses. This is the time, I think, for us to be able to recommend supporting the schools in a one-time nature. This is not, I don't think this should be precedential in that we're saying like, hey, this is how we should do this all the time, but the fact that stories that we heard today, me feel like this is the time to sort of leverage that clause in the instructions around one time, unique, or exceptional. And so I would be supporting the recommendation of 100%.
So my comment to, basically I should say to you, Commissioner Taylor, thank you for reading my notes. Because I'm hearing the same things as everyone has stood and shared, and you talk about folks who have track records for 15 years plus, and having one time suddenly struggled with that. I would also say, please do a better job of expressing your concerns for whatever the mitigating circumstances are. Some of that for me is just a matter of, we shouldn't take for granted that this board or any other board would automatically assume those circumstances. And I think those should be called out to be fully explained for my own sake of due diligence. But I also am feeling that this is a pretty unique opportunity right now. So do we have any further questions of CDE staff while they're here? I want to thank CDE for the work on this item as well. We appreciate that. We have a motion, and the motion is to move forward a recommendation for 2 years at 100% funding. So I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote now. So, Commissioner Brazil.
President Walsh.
Sorry, Commissioner Olmos.
I would like to recuse myself from item 15.
For school number 15 of this one. All right, so then we'll have to do the same process we did earlier, and we'll take the first vote minus school 15. We'll ask you to step out, and then we'll take the vote without you. So, Commissioner Fennell, do you mind if we take we need to amend a friendly amendment to your motion, please.
I amend the motion as noted.
All right, and so do we have a second on that, Dr. King? All right, so the motion has been amended to not include school number 15 for this recommendation at the moment. We'll take them up separately. So, calling for the vote, Commissioner Brazil, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
I'm sorry? Not for this one. He'll step out when we take on the next one. So, again, I'm sorry, Commissioner Brazil, you voted?
I voted aye.
All right, so we have one vote for aye. Commissioner Farland?
No.
One vote for no. Commissioner Fennell?
Aye.
We have Commissioner Jones.
No.
Commissioner King.
Aye.
And Commissioner Olmos.
Aye.
And Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So at this moment, that vote motion carries 6-2. At this point, we'll take out school 15 and we'll ask Commissioner Olmos to step outside. All right, and so I'll entertain a motion for school number 15 on this item.
This is Commissioner Taylor. I'll motion to approve 100% funding for school number 15 for 2 years.
All right, is there a second?
Commissioner Brazil, I'll second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Taylor, a second by Commissioner Brazil for 100% for 2 years for school number 15. Comments, questions? Then let the voting begin. Commissioner Brazil?
Aye.
And then Commissioner Farland?
No.
And Commissioner Fennell?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
No.
And Commissioner King?
Aye.
And Commissioner Taylor?
Aye.
And I vote aye. And motion passes for school 15. Please someone escort Dr. Olmos back in, please, before he tries to sneak off to a Starbucks. welcome back. So at this time, we'll move on to item number 3. Let me double check. Everything okay? All right, good. We're going to item number 3. We'll try and see if we can get one more in, and then we'll take a break. All right, so item number 3, this is a funding determination reconsideration request again. So McKenna Yui from Charter Schools Division will present. Welcome back, McKenna.
Thank you. So as Chair Walsh just stated, item 3 consists of the reconsideration of a non-classroom-based funding determination request. So a little bit of background regarding reconsideration requests. Regulations permit a charter school wishing to seek a higher or lower level of funding for its non-classroom-based instruction to do so during the effective period of its funding determination by filing a new determination of funding request for consideration by the State Board. If approved, the reconsideration request replaces the determination of funding then in effect. If denied, the charter school's determination of funding remains in effect with no change. So this item includes a reconsideration request from Guajome Learning Center. Guajome Learning Center has a currently active funding determination approved at 85% for fiscal years 2022-23 and 2023-24. In this item, the school is requesting that its funding determination be increased to 100% for these 2 years. The department proposes to recommend that the State Board approve the school's reconsideration request and increase its current funding level from 85% to 100% for fiscal years 2022-23 and 2023-24. So a little bit of history about this school's last 2 funding determinations requests, which led us to the reconsideration request that we are hearing today. At its November 2020 meeting, the State Board approved Guajome Learning Center's funding determination for 85% for fiscal years 2020-21 and 2021-22, as was requested by the school. The school's funding determination request was based on reported fiscal year 2018-19 financial data. On June 30th, 2022, pursuant to Senate Bill 820, Section 75, as the school submitted a complete and timely funding determination request to the department, it received its current level of funding for 2 years. And so that was 85% for fiscal years 2022-23 and 2023-24. So in this item, the school is requesting that its currently effective funding determination be increased from 85% to 100% for fiscal years 2022-23 and 2023-24. The department finds that the school meets the requirements for a recommendation of 100% funding for its non-classroom-based instruction. So for this reason, the department proposes to recommend that the State Board approve Guajome Learning Center's reconsideration request and increase its current level of funding from 85% to 100% for the fiscal years indicated on this slide. If the school's reconsideration request is approved, the school will be eligible to receive 100% funding for its non-classroom-based instruction for the aforementioned fiscal years. Thank you again for your consideration of this item. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions.
And at this time, if anyone has any questions regarding clarification of information that's already been presented, any commissioners? Seeing none. We have a question from Commissioner Olmos.
I do have a question just on the previous slide. I'm just, a little baffled at looking at that where their percentage spent on certificated staff is 97%. So if 97% is spent, then 3% is left on the budget for other areas. And then the total instruction is 111%.
So the percentage spent on certificated salaries and benefits, that calculation is based on a charter school's total public revenues. And then the calculation for the percentage spent on instruction and related services is all of its revenues in its entirety.
That answer your question? All right. Then any further questions? All right. Then we will go ahead and move on to public comment, and we'll take the phone lines first. So are there any call-ins for this question, for this item?
Thank you, Commissioner. No, we don't have any callers at this time.
And we will take public comment from those present today. Do we have anyone presenting or making public comment?
We do not have any individuals making public comment.
I see folks lined up in the back. Are you, no, just stretching? All right, we'll move on then. So at this point, do we have any, we can move on to our own deliberation. Do we have comments or questions that we want to make, or are we ready to make a motion?
So,
Commissioner Fennell.
Yeah, so similar to Dr. Olmos's comments, I mean, obviously, if a paper review of this would trigger all kinds of red flags and concerns, right, in terms of their revenue and then their expenditures. And again, it's back to I'm sorry for beating the same drum, but back to this formula-driven model, right, where it'd be easy to hit those targets if you just spend more money than you have. And so I think, at least the information that we have before us is that they're running a pretty sizable deficit based on their level of revenue that's coming in. And so while I get that they spent the money to hit the targets, I guess maybe my question to the department is, did you evaluate the sustainability and solvency of this program in order to, or is this really just a matter of them hitting those two markers in the formula and therefore recommending 100%?
Yeah, the department's review and recommendations are based around regulations and what is prescribed by that. Our review is limited to, again, what the school provides to us on the funding determination form.
Okay, so hearing that, I just have concerns that they're running such a sizable deficit and with very little information for us to consider in terms of how they plan to mitigate that.
Commissioner Farland.
I was just going to say that, again, our review is fairly limited, and what you're talking about could possibly be a concern that an authorizer should look at, but our review is limited, so no, we're not going into everybody's budget and determining who's fiscally sustainable and who isn't. We don't have the capacity to do that. It's not part of the process here.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, finish.
I was just going to tag. My concern then is that with this sizable of a deficit, even with the increase in funding, I have serious questions about the solvency of this program. So,
Commissioner Taylor.
So McKenna, thank you again for your thoughtful and deep presentation on this. I was going through the funding determination form sent in by the school, and I was trying to understand: is it the reserves that they're spending out of that is causing them to spend, over the amount of revenue? Because when I'm looking on page 4 of 9 in the packet, it talks about having a 69% reserve. It looks like, as far as I'm trying to understand it, is it that they're spending a sizable chunk out of their reserves to then get to these high levels? Is that correct? Yeah.
So the school does report, approximately $714,000 in reserves. The school did provide an explanation, and they indicated those are set aside to rent or purchase a facility.
Got it. And so their revenues over expenditures, there's this $291,000 higher up on that page. They're running a $291,000 deficit to meet these targets.
I believe so.
Got it. Thank you.
Further questions, comments? And again, the statement I'll make is just we have to be careful against noting that there's some information that's missing. We still want to be careful about what we project into the answer for what's missing, just as much as we're concerned about that information not being there. So I do want to caution us because we have to work with what's right in front of us. And so I appreciate the concerns, the questions that you're asking. I just want to be mindful that some of that we can't really project into our answer.
100%. And is this recommendation that's being made just for the fiscal year 22-23, or is it 22-23 and 23-24?
For both fiscal years, 2022-23 and 2023-24.
Got it. Thank you.
So Commissioner Fennell.
Yeah, I would just say that, the information we have before us is that they're running a very sizable deficit. The only information or explanation we have on their reserves is that they want to construct facilities or procure facilities, which really wouldn't address their operational deficit. So I'd like to move that we deny the change in status of their determination of funding.
So we have a motion to deny by Commissioner Fennell. Do I have a second? Hearing none, motion dies. Well, a motion doesn't do well. All right, so I'll entertain another motion.
I move that we accept the CDE's recommendation for reconsideration to go from 85% to 100% funding for fiscal years 22-23 and 23-24.
So we have a motion by Commissioner King to move forward on CDE's recommendation. I think I just talked over someone seconding.
Sorry, I'll second that.
So seconding by Commissioner Taylor. And comment, go right ahead.
I'd just like to ask, knowing that the question was posed as to the years of funding, 22-23, 23-24, I'm wondering if it is a possibility to simply approve the 22-23 school year and not include the 23-24 until further information is made available. I know I just screwed everything up, but...
No. It's my understanding that the recommendation always to be 2 years minimum, correct?
Is that correct, McKenna? That's what is stated in regulations for an existing.
Thank you.
Thank you for the clarity. So further comment? All right, then I will go ahead and take the vote. Hey, my name's up here first. How do I vote? Yes. Commissioner Taylor?
Aye.
And Commissioner Olmos?
Aye.
Commissioner King?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
No.
And Commissioner Fennell?
No.
Commissioner Farland?
Aye.
And Commissioner Brazil?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, let's take a break. Yes, I knew you would feel good about that. We'll take a break. We'll take 45 minutes so we can give everyone a chance to get back and go grab this nutrition and come back. We'll see you in 45 minutes. All right, we are welcome back. We are in session, beginning again at 12:38. It's time to move on to item number 4. In this item, the ACCS will consider information provided by T.I.M.E community in response to a notice of violation issued by the State Board of Education at its March 2023 meeting. The State Board of Education is looking to the ACCS to evaluate and provide a recommendation about the adequacy of T.I.M.E's response. The item will be jointly presented by Rick Reyes of the California Department of Ed and Indra Ciccarelli from the Los Angeles County Office of Education. So at this time, there we are. So Rick, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Walsh, Commissioners, Craig Heimechner, Education Administrator, Charter Schools Division. And I will be starting off this item, but hand it off to someone in our office. So with that said, this is item number 4 to consider propose that the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools considers evidence regarding the notice of violation, or NOV, issued to T.I.M.E community, or T.I.M.E, by the California State Board of Education, SBE, pursuant to California Education Code, Section 47607G, and also to bring to the Commission a proposal that you could also propose that the State Board issue a notice of intent to revoke with notice of facts to T.I.M.E pursuant to Ed Code Section 47607H. In California Education Code Section 47607, there are 2 parts we'd like to call your attention to. First is F, which states that a charter may be revoked by the chartering authority if the authority finds through a showing of substantial evidence that the charter school did any of the following. Number one, committed a material violation of any of the conditions, standards, or procedures set forth in the charter. And number two, failed to meet or pursue any of the pupil outcomes identified in the charter. Three, if the charter failed to meet generally accepted accounting principles or engaged in fiscal mismanagement, and four, violated any law. And then secondly, in 47607G, it stated that before revocation, the chartering authority shall notify the charter school of any violation and provide the school a reasonable opportunity to remedy the violation. And then here to take over is Rick Reyes, Education Programs Consultant in the Charter Schools Division, and he'll begin with the background and history of Time Community. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Walsh and Commissioners. So the appeal to establish Time Community, a bit of background. On October 23rd, 2019, Time was denied by the Montebello Unified School District. And on January 14th, 2020, Time was denied by the Los Angeles County Board of Education. On March 6th, 2020, Time appealed the establishment of its charter to the SBE, and the CDE recommended that the SBE deny the petition to establish Time based on findings that the petitioner was unlikely to successfully implement the program, and that the petition did not contain reasonably comprehensive descriptions of the required elements. On June 9th, 2020, the ACCS moved to recommend that the SBE approve the establishment of the Time Charter, and the motion passed by a vote of 7-2. On July 9th, 2020, the SBE approved the establishment of Time of the Time Charter for a 5-year term, effective July 1st, 2020, with a delay in opening and starting instruction in 2021-2022. Per the petition, Time anticipated serving 110 pupils in grade 9 beginning in 2020-21, and growing to serve 600 pupils in grade 9 through grade 12 in 2024-25. Time's enrollment as of its 2021-22 second principal apportionment was 40 students. At its July 2020 meeting, by mutual agreement, the SBE designated supervisorial and oversight responsibilities of Time to the Los Angeles County Office of Education, or LACO, pursuant to former Education Code Section 47605K1. LACO provides oversight and technical assistance for 27 charter schools, including Time, and is experienced in supporting the success of small charter schools. LACO provides the same support to Time as it does to its other charter schools, and LACO has attempted on several occasions to assist Time in remedying their deteriorating financial state. However, Time has continually demonstrated an unwillingness to adhere to the sound financial practices that LACO has advised, resulting in the dire financial state of the school. In previous board action in 2022, LACO and the CDE identified concerns with Time's fiscal management. At the July 14th, 2022 SBE meeting, the CDE recommended that the SBE issue a notice of violation. The SBE moved to approve the CDE recommendation. However, the motion failed by a vote of 5-4, and 6 votes are required to carry a motion, so no action was taken by the SBE. Throughout 2022-23, LACO and the CDE continued to have ongoing concerns with Time's fiscal management. On March 9th, 2023, in alignment with the CDE's recommendation, the SBE issued a notice of violation to Time, finding substantial evidence that demonstrated that the school failed to meet generally accepted accounting principles and engaged in fiscal mismanagement, citing the following specific violations: unrealistic enrollment and average daily attendance projections, significant differences in financial projections and actual results, and low cash flow projections. On the screen here, you'll see the definition of fiscal mismanagement the CDE included in its presentation to the SBE on March 9th of this year. Fiscal mismanagement is the failure to appropriately manage an agency's finances, thereby creating a substantial risk to the agency's ability to function or accomplish its mission. Possible indicators of fiscal mismanagement for charter schools may include one or more of the following: unreliable or insufficient budget development, monitoring, or updates, inadequate cash management, mismanaged employee compensation, continuing deficit spending, inattention to enrollment and attendance reporting, inadequate fund balance and reserve for economic uncertainty, ineffective internal controls and fraud prevention, lack of multi-year planning, and inattention to debt and risk management. We would like to note that while fiscal mismanagement can include issues such as fraud, in this case it does not. As the definition on this slide shows, mismanagement does not have to be intentional. However, from this presentation, I think you will see that TIME does meet many of the indicators listed here. On March 24th, 2023, TIME provided its response to the notice of violation and a fiscal stability plan to the CDE and LACO. And the CDE's proposed recommendation is that TIME has failed to adequately refute, remedy, or propose to remedy the violations outlined in the notice of violation. And the CDE proposes to recommend that the SBE issue a notice of intent to revoke with notice of facts to TIME, pursuant to Education Code Section 47607H at its May 18th and 19th, 2023 meeting. A bit about the revocation process. Today, the ACCS is considering the evidence submitted by TIME in response to the notice of violation issued by the SBE, and will make a recommendation to the SBE regarding whether to issue a notice of intent to revoke with notice of facts to TIME. On May 18th, the SBE will consider the evidence submitted by TIME in response to the notice of violation and decide whether to issue a notice of intent to revoke with notice of facts. At that meeting, both the CDE recommendations and the ACCS recommendation will be presented to the SBE. And then on May 19th, the SBE may hold a public hearing to consider the revocation of TIME. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Indra Ciccarelli from the Los Angeles County Office of Education.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chair, Commissioner members. My name is Indra Ciccarelli. I'm the Director of the Charter School Office for Los Angeles County Office of Education. As you know, TIME Community School began instruction in July of 2021 in Montebello, California, within the boundaries of the Montebello Unified School District. In its first year of operation, TIME planned to enroll 260 students in grades 9 and 10. However, the school opened with only 27 students, eventually enrolling a total of just 41 students for the remainder of the school year. For the current school year, TIME had 61 students enrolled as of March 24th, 2023. The school's mission is displayed on the slide in front of you. The operating entity is TIME Community Education. The following fiscal concerns were listed in the LACO January 26th, 2022 Notice of Concern. TIME failed to demonstrate financial viability for the 21-22 school year and subsequent fiscal years due to its enrollment shortfall, deficit spending, potential cash deficiencies, reliance on debts, and a negative ending net position for the 2021-22 fiscal year. LACO sent TIME a second Notice of Concern on June 28th, 2022, based on continued unrealistic enrollment and average daily attendance projections, which grossly impacted revenue and school operations. Additional concerns were documented in the notice, including the school's projected fiscal insolvency, debt accumulation, and unreliable cash projections. The current concerns regarding TIME Community School are listed in the slide in front of you and will be detailed in the slides to follow. Of note is the fact that the school's adopted budget for the current school year again included unrealistic enrollment and ADA projections, in spite of guidance from LACO to plan more conservatively based on the enrollment and attendance shortfalls from the previous school year. This pattern of planning will continue to perpetuate a structural deficit and fiscal insolvency despite any significant one-time funds secured by the school. I'd like to now hand the presentation over to my colleague, Dr. Brown, to review T.I.M.E's response and staff's ongoing concerns.
Thank you, Andrea, and good afternoon, Commissioners. As stated in the Notice of Violation issued by the SBE, T.I.M.E has continually developed budgets based on unrealistic enrollment and ADA projections. T.I.M.E's responses to the Notice of Violation are listed on the slide in front of you. Now they're listed on the slide in front of you. Thank you. In reviewing T.I.M.E's response to the Notice of Violation, both LACO and CDE staff found that T.I.M.E continues its pattern of aspirational budget development despite repeated failures to meet projected enrollment targets. T.I.M.E's response stated that it will completely or almost completely be out of debt by the end of 2023-24, yet T.I.M.E's fiscal stability plan states it will reduce its debt only in half by that time. The school's response lacked a detailed plan to support either assertion. It should be noted that T.I.M.E has made similar assertions in the past that have not been realized. The school seems to believe that many of its fiscal concerns stem from their inability to get certain revenues. To be clear, T.I.M.E did not get the PCSPG grant because it failed to meet minimum enrollment requirements, and in fact have still never met those requirements. T.I.M.E subsequently wanted to appeal that decision and asked LACO for a letter of good standing in order to make that appeal. Despite an outstanding notice of concern by LACO in good faith asked the state for an extension on T.I.M.E's behalf in order to give the school an opportunity to provide documentation addressing staff concerns. T.I.M.E failed to meet that timeline, declining to provide any documentation before the deadline. In terms of the state's revolving loan program, T.I.M.E did, in fact, access $100,000. In addition, the school has also sold over $400,000 in receivables. T.I.M.E is not in its current situation because of a lack of revenue. It is because of a failure to manage their money properly. Again, both LACO and CDE found that T.I.M.E's budgets and multi-year projections are based on unrealistic enrollment and ADA projections. T.I.M.E is fiscally insolvent for the current fiscal year and subsequent 2 fiscal years due to unrealistic projections, structural deficits, inadequate cash, and a continued accumulation of debt. The table before you illustrates T.I.M.E's unrealistic enrollment and ADA projections for the last fiscal year and current fiscal year. In 2021-22, T.I.M.E projected an ADA of approximately 156 students, but its certified P2 showed an ADA of approximately 34 students, a shortfall of 122 students, or 78% below the projected ADA. In 2022-23, T.I.M.E projected an ADA of approximately 104 students, but its reported P1 ADA showed approximately 55 students, a shortfall of 49 students, or 47% below the projected ADA. It should be noted that in correspondence to the State Board on July 8, 2022, T.I.M.E stated that enrollment for the 22-23 school year included 70 fully registered students with an additional 15 registrations in progress for a total of 85 students. T.I.M.E began the 2022-23 school year with just 63 students. In addition, T.I.M.E's most recent fiscal stabilization plan projects an enrollment increase of 30 students for next year and an increase of 68 students in 24-25, which is a year that the school will no longer be adding grade levels. In addition, the school is projecting a 90% attendance rate. However, T.I.M.E's monthly attendance rate has only met or exceeded 90% in 6 out of 18 months of the school's existence. The slide before you displays concerns regarding financial projections and actual results stated within the notice of violation and Time's response to those concerns. The CDE and LACO find the Time's responses to the notice of violation failed to address concerns that its fiscal projections continually differ from actual results. Time provides only aspirational assurances of its future financial viability. It should be noted that while the Time Board voted to accept loan forgiveness, they have declined to forward a board resolution, nor has LACO received documentation from Dr. Ramirez as the lender, providing evidence that he has forgiven the loans that he has provided for the school. The table before you summarizes Time's financial projections for the last fiscal year and current fiscal year. Time's 2021-22 adopted budget projected an operating surplus of approximately $376,000 and an ending net position of approximately $468,000. However, the school ended the fiscal year with a deficit of just over $378,000 and a negative ending net position of $268,436. Time's 2022-23 adopted budget projected an operating surplus of approximately $509,000 and an ending net position of approximately $285,000. However, the school's first interim report updated its projections to incur a deficit of approximately $68,000 and an ending net position of negative $336,748. Time's actual revenues and expenses from July 1, 2022 through February 28, 2023 reflect an operating deficit of $452,222 and an ending net position of negative $720,657. LACO remains concerned with Time's fiscal insolvency status due to the structural level of deficit spending, rising debts, and cash deficiencies. Time's reserves for economic uncertainties has grown from negative 23.3% to negative 33.8%, which is substantially below the 3% minimum reserve required pursuant to the LACO Memorandum of Understanding. The table before you summarizes the changes in Time's financial position based on reported actuals from July 1, 2022 through February 28, 2023. Due to deficit spending, as previously discussed, Time's total assets have decreased from $226,633 to negative $61,522, a decrease in total assets by approximately $288,000. The negative net assets of $61,522 is due to the sale of future state aid receivables of $328,800, offset by other assets, including a cash balance of $49,943. Time's total liabilities increased from a July balance of approximately $495,000 to $659,136 as of February 28, 2023, an increase in total liabilities of approximately $164,000 or 33%. Total net assets decreased by $452,222 or 168%. As previously stated, Time's unrealistic projections, including revenue projections, have contributed to its current fiscal position. The school's adopted 22-23 budget included $247,500 in revenue from subleasing space within the school's facility. LACO staff met with Time to express concern regarding the school's ability to secure subleases totaling the budgeted amount. The amount was later revised to $150,000 in anticipated subleasing revenue. Time has actualized just $19,710 in subleasing revenue through February 2023, which projects a shortfall in subleasing revenue of approximately $79,000. The table before you illustrates Time's ongoing unrealistic revenue projections. Again, Time's adopted budget for 2022-23 projected $247,500 in annual revenues from subleasing. At the start of the year, these leases had not been executed, and a revised budget in October then projected $150,000 despite having unexecuted leases. In December, school leadership assured LACO that a January lease for $10,000 a month was forthcoming. In January, the lease was revised to begin in February, and in February, revised again to begin in March, now leasing for $6,000 per month rather than $10,000 per month. Just as Time's projected lease revenue in year 2 was unrealistic, so too was the school's budgeted attendance rates. Despite historic data to the contrary, Time has continued to budget at a 95% attendance rate. This has significantly impacted their projected and budgeted ADA. As you can see in the school's month-over-month attendance data, Time's monthly attendance rate has only met or exceeded 90% in 6 out of 18 months of the school's existence. Additionally, those 6 months happened last year when the school had fewer students, and 3 of the 6 months occurred during months with 10 or fewer instructional days. Further reviews showed that the month with the highest enrollment so far this year also saw the lowest attendance rate for this year. The school's assumption that it will somehow be able to increase its enrollment by more than it ever has before, while additionally increasing attendance rates, points to the school not taking into account its own historical data. Increasing to 92 students next year is certainly not a conservative estimate, and while next year's projections are aspirational, the following year's projection of 160 students without adding any grade levels seems completely unreasonable. Time's response to the notice of violation contained no information related to cash flow projections. Therefore, the CDE and LACO were unable to provide additional analysis on this matter. Time's cash management remains a major area of concern. As of February 28, 2023, Time had a cash balance of $49,943, or approximately 13 days of operating cash. Due to its structural deficit, rising debts, and inadequate cash, Time may not be able to meet its financial obligations, including payroll and related expenses, in the current and subsequent fiscal years. I will now turn the presentation back over to Mr. Ciccarelli.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. In addition to all of these serious fiscal concerns, there are a couple other items for consideration by this commission. First, Time executed a loan prior to receiving approval by its board. In its response to the notice of violation, the school stated that the violation was unintentional. However, the school needs to enact corrective action to ensure that this does not happen again. Second, at the time of its 2021-22 independent audit, Time had accumulated $281,348 in defaulted loans, along with an outstanding $100,000 loan from the Charter School Revolving Loan Fund. Time's response to the NOV does not provide evidence to refute the statements in the notice of violation related to Time's failure to repay its debts. As of February 28, 2022, Time had total liabilities of $659,136, comprised of the following: 7 promissory notes totaling over $325,000, 5 of which were due directly to the executive director for a total of over $219,000. Several payments to the director were due between February 28th, 2022 and August 31st, 2022. $60,000 was due to another private individual with a payment due August 15th, 2022, and an additional $60,000 due to a subleasee in April 2023. 6 of these promissory notes have been defaulted for at least 6 months. Additional debt includes accounts payable and accrued liabilities totaling $253,490 and a California School Financing Authority loan balance of $80,000. While the Time Board voted to amend the terms for 6 of its loans, LACO did request but has not received signed promissory notes that would include the new terms. A final consideration is the impact to the educational program. For example, against advice to the contrary, the school intentionally left its counselor position unfilled. Per the petition, this position coordinates student testing. In 2021-22, Time failed to administer the complete set of NWEA MAP assessments, subsequently failing to report the academic performance for all students. Time's reporting of 2021-22 internal benchmark data was directly impacted by its fiscal instability. The 2021-22 internal benchmark data that was submitted by Time shows that fewer than half of its students met their growth projections in reading and math. LACO has requested Time's current 2022-23 benchmark data. However, the data has not been forwarded. LACO staff have tried to help the school. Since Time's authorization, LACO has taken many steps to support the charter school, including 9 site visits by LACO staff that included the charter school office, facilities unit, pupil attendance accounting and compliance, Los Angeles County SELPA, and even Los Angeles County board members. 2 comprehensive meetings with the executive director and members of the governing board, monthly fiscal monitoring, bi-weekly Zoom meetings with all of our authorized county charter schools, regular meetings, calls, and emails with a LACO assigned coordinator. And as noted earlier, we had meetings with state staff and even requested extensions on the school's behalf. Unfortunately, despite LACO staff having given specific and actionable advice, Time has been unwilling to implement much of the guidance offered by LACO staff with extensive experience with new charter schools. Therefore, despite this widespread support, LACO staff were prompted to send 2 notifications of concern delivered to the Time Board on January 26th and June 28th, 2022. As the Commission can see, we have serious concerns with Time's ability to meet its fiscal responsibilities. In fact, just today we even received the latest financial reports that indicate that as of the end of March, the school actually has a negative cash balance in its bank account. We understand that there have been challenges. Having been a charter leader myself, I was often faced with challenges beyond my control. Good school leaders don't lead problem-free lives. They're simply able to respond to challenges and adjust accordingly. Unfortunately, at every point where Time leadership is given the opportunity to adjust their budget according to real numbers, they refuse to do so. Time leadership presented to the State Board last July, stating they would pay off their debt this year, that the school had 70 students fully enrolled, with 15 more in progress and an additional 200 parents expressing interest. Despite this strong attestation, the school actually began the year with only 63 students. Somehow, they still believe they'll get to 160 students in a little over a year from now. They do not use historic or baseline data and therefore fail to manage their money accordingly. This is why in 2 years, the school's debt has ballooned to almost $700,000 without a realistic plan to remove this debt. Time continues to have a structural deficit, such that even if the school were able to receive significant one-time funds, this structural deficit would maintain its fiscal insolvency. We've given specific and actionable advice. Our seasoned and experienced fiscal advisors have given advice. We don't want any of our schools to fail. However, we cannot in good conscience simply hope for the best without planning for the worst. We need to advocate for the students and staff that suffer as the school continues to fail in its fiscal obligations. We need to stop this debt train before there is a mid-year closure that would be devastating to this community. We urge you to recommend revocation of this school that has been unable to live up to its promise to the community. Thank you. I'll now hand the presentation back to the CDE staff.
In conclusion, T.I.M.E has failed to adequately refute, remedy, or propose to remedy the violations outlined in the notice of violation that was issued to the school by the State Board on March 9th, 2023. And so the CDE proposes to recommend that the SBE issue a notice of intent to revoke with notice of facts to T.I.M.E pursuant to Ed Code Section 47607H at its May 18th and 19th, 2023 meeting. And that is the proposal for you to consider as a commission today. Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, we'll hear from Gabriel Ramirez, the Executive Director of T.I.M.E. And you'll have 10 minutes for the presentation.
Yeah, bro.
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, ACCS Commission. My name is Dr. Gabriel Ramirez, and I am the Executive Director and founder of T.I.M.E Community Schools. I'm appreciative of this opportunity to respond to the notice of violation and demonstrate that the findings are incorrect or misleading. But more importantly, demonstrate that T.I.M.E has provided a plan that enables us to fully stabilize our finances and continue to operate our innovative and high-quality educational program. I'd like to begin by sharing with you who T.I.M.E serves. T.I.M.E is located in Montebello, a community that is primarily Latino and whose academic outcomes match those of East Los Angeles. It is a historically underserved community where only 30% of students upon graduation are eligible to apply to a four-year university. After the age of 25, only 16% have a degree of AA or higher. I share this with you to illustrate the need for schools that offer well-researched, innovative learning models. As you know, T.I.M.E was approved in July 2020 in the early days of the pandemic. Opening was postponed for 1 year as no one knew how long the pandemic would last. During this period, T.I.M.E was expected to recruit students. The most effective recruitment strategy was feet on the ground, person-to-person recruitment, but this was non-existent during this time. T.I.M.E tapped into our interest forms collected during the petition process, but given our challenges with Prop 39 and that we did not have a history track record as a school, families were dissuaded to commit because of the uncertainties. T.I.M.E will forever have a place in history as one of the very few charter schools to open during a pandemic and face the unparalleled challenges to opening, recruiting, and operating. Next, I would like to address the term fiscal mismanagement. If T.I.M.E had engaged in fiscal mismanagement, then a finding would have been identified in the audit. T.I.M.E had a clean audit in fiscal year 21-22 with known findings. In fact, T.I.M.E continued to structure a fiscal model that has allowed the school to continue operation despite the financial challenges we have faced. T.I.M.E weathered a bad situation and operates the school honestly, thoughtfully, and responsibly. But I do understand that today is about you knowing that we can be financially stable moving forward. LACO states that T.I.M.E projected enrollment is unrealistic, that, quote, T.I.M.E has continuously failed to meet its enrollment projections with historical trends indicating about 20 students per grade level, end quote. In fiscal year 22-23, I want to be clear. T.I.M.E made projections based on the interest letters we gathered as that is all we had, given we had no historical data. Even when using LACO's recommended 40% rate of enrolling families, which would have been 80 students, that did not materialize. COVID absolutely skewed and affected enrollment for new and established schools. The 23-24 school year will be the first year that T.I.M.E uses historical data to hopefully accurately project student enrollment. The argument today is whether T.I.M.E can make a plan that uses realistic enrollment, pay off debt, and meet the reserve. Please look at the enrollment chart that I'm providing in front of you. While we did not meet projections, T.I.M.E did demonstrate enrollment increases. From year 1 to 2, we were able to increase enrollment by 50%. We used the same model of achievement for fiscal year 23-24. We will increase enrollment from 62 to 92, a 30-student variance, which comes from targeted 9th grade recruitment, while other grade levels scale down from previous year, accounting for losses and gains in enrollment. In year 24-25, we will increase enrollment from 92 to 160 for a 68-student variance by adding an average of 10 to 15 students per grade level as we scale down from the previous year. As an example, you will note in 23-24, we have 30 students in 9th grade. We will move those students to 10th grade, adding 11 students in fiscal year 24-25. Please note, T.I.M.E has no data for the 12th grade, but we'll have this data in fall 23, and if need be, we'll update our 24-25 forecast accordingly. Our enrollment plan and forecasted ADA allows T.I.M.E to 1, build a forecasted surplus for the year, 2, create a budget that pays off current debt, and 3, then meet our MOU reserve of 3%. I do want to address what funds we did not receive and the funds we did receive. In fiscal year 21-22, T.I.M.E entered into an agreement to receive $250,000 from the school revolving loan. T.I.M.E was successful in receiving only $100,000 in fiscal year 21-22. Following the agreement, LACO refused to issue a letter of good standing, which denied us the additional $150,000 in fiscal year 21-22. LACO falsely claimed that we received 100% of our funding. It's clear that LACO's action resulted in blocking additional revolving loan funds. Further, LACO states that T.I.M.E sold receivables without a letter of good standing. Specifically, LACO states that they could not issue a letter of good standing due to a notice of concern that LACO issued on June 26, 2022. The notice of concern that LACO references was brought to the state board by the CDE in July 22 and was not approved. Given the outcome in T.I.M.E.'s favor, T.I.M.E asked for a letter of good standing, and LACO provided this letter on July 26, 2022. The letter states that, quote, "The charter is in full force and effect, and there is no action now pending before the state board." LACO acknowledges our good standing. This letter dated July 26, 22 allowed us the opportunity to enter in an agreement to sell our receivables for fiscal year 22-23 from August through March, as receivables are sold several months in advance prior to funding. LACO falsely state that T.I.M.E sold receivables without a letter of good standing. LACO claims that T.I.M.E was denied PCSGB funding due to its failure to enroll a minimum of 80 students in its first year of operation. I will direct you to the letter dated January 31st, 2022, where CDE provided T.I.M.E with 2 options. 1, achieve enrollment of 80 students, or 2, provide documentation to reevaluate the financial stability of the charter school at current enrollment levels. Option 2 was in question because LACO refused to provide a letter of good standing in relation to a stabilized fiscal plan. I will direct you again to the letter from LACO dated July 26, 2022, providing a letter of good standing. We received this letter 1 week after being denied the PCSGP funds from the CDE. Had we gotten the letter sooner, the assumption is that T.I.M.E would have received critical startup PCSGP funds, eliminating the need to borrow from lenders and incurring debts. LACO questions why we include SB 740 funds in our budget. The financial forecast for T.I.M.E in fiscal year 22-23 included SB 740 funding because, according to the California School Finance Authority, eligibility of funding includes being in, quote, good standing with its chartering authority at the time of application submission, end quote. As you can see, the application was submitted in June 2022. The letter of good standing continued July 26, 2022. Then why was funding denied to T.I.M.E? These 2 documents demonstrate that T.I.M.E met the criteria of being in good standing at time of application. However, LACO then proceeded to communicate to the Finance Authority in October 2022, 4 months later, that we were not in good standing, contradicting their July letter. Again, LACO is taking critical funds from T.I.M.E, forcing us to look at other funding streams that increase debt and affect our ability to operate. Fiscal year 2022-23 is coming to a close. It would be unrealistic to expect T.I.M.E to plan to end the year at a surplus. However, T.I.M.E has developed a stabilizing fiscal plan in the next 2 years that results in forecasted surplus year after year, while eliminating the ending net position deficit and meeting the MOU required reserve of 3% by fiscal year 24-25. In fiscal year 23-24, Time will increase its enrollment from 62 to 29, with an attendance rate of 90% of enrollment. Using the FCMAT calculator of 8.13 LCFF COLA, this will provide state aid funding over $1.3 million. Total revenue for the year combined is over $1.8 million. This includes SB 740 funding and projected lease rental income. Expenses are forecasted at 2%
Two-minute
COLA
warning.
increase. I'm sorry?
You have 2 minutes remaining.
Oh, thank you. Across the board, Time will partner with an entity to support the short-term cash flow needs in the next 2 years until the timing of the state revenue payment matches up to current enrollment. The school will have a surplus each year that will be sufficient to build the cash reserves necessary to overcome the delay in cash receipts from government sources. In year 24-25, we will increase enrollment from 92 to 160 with a 90% attendance rate to enrolling, leading to over $2.4 million in state aid with a combined total revenue of $3.1 million. This again includes SB 740 funding and rental income. Expenses are increasing with a consistent 2% COLA across the board as indicated in the previous year. This fiscal plan allows us to start addressing current debt by developing viable payment plans to our lenders, addressing our deficit and stabilizing cash flows. Further, Time's current financial plan does not include the possible loan forgiveness of $218,000 if Time continues to operate in the 23-24 school year. Bingo revenue and other fundraising. This plan is based solely on ADA funds from state aid, federal funding, and other state revenue. Today, we have demonstrated that our plan is absolutely viable. Our numbers are based on historical data. While we wish that our financial situation could be remedied immediately, our 2-year plan is based on actual data and trends. Ultimately, in a time where families are looking for high-quality public schools, why would the Commission recommend closure when we are showing results? I would like to remind the ACCS Commission what Time has achieved in a short time in operation. Over 70% of our students who entered Time had a 1.5 GPA. After 1 year, 70% of our students improved their GPA by 1 full point. 100% of our students are participating in dual enrollment. 100% of our students participate in clubs and tutoring. Time received its full WASC accreditation in its first year of operation, a difficult task for first-year schools. Time has been accepted into the League of Innovative Schools, the first single school to receive this honor. Time was just awarded a $78,000 grant. Please give Time the opportunity to complete its plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So at this time, we'll take questions from the commissioners that are based on clarity and just getting clarification regarding anything that has actually been shared with us. Then we'll move on to public comment, at which point after that, we'll be able to dig in with the deeper questions. So, Commissioner Taylor.
Help me understand the oversight relationship. I think I kind of didn't follow along. So LACO is the authorized or the oversight entity that was authorized by the SBE?
They are. That section of EDCO doesn't exist anymore. 1505 did away with it, but this was prior, and the state board appointed LACO as the oversight entity, although the state board is still the authorizer.
Commissioner King.
My question, my question actually relates to, will probably have to be answered by the operator, and it related to ADA projections. So what I thought I heard was that the projections for ADA was 90%, but I wanted to ask the question with respect to the historical data having not met the 90%. My other question was relating to the loan forgiveness documents that were here, but they weren't executed.
So those, so those might be the ones that we want to bring back up to ask the deeper dive on those. What it sounds like. Any other clarifying questions? All right, then we'll move on to public comment, and we'll take public comment on the phone for item 4 first, and then we'll take public comment from those who are in the room today.
Thank you, Chair Walsh. Yes, we do have 4 callers in the queue. Good morning, caller. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
My name is Dave Navarre, MTA president. I am a veteran 27-year public school educator, representing the Montebello Teachers Association as president. Time's response to the notice of violation sent in March 2023 is familiar in its inadequacy. The CDE has determined that Time has not adequately refuted, remedied, or proposed a plan to address the violations identified in the notice of violation. As educators, we have a responsibility to make sure public tax dollars meant for students responsibly reach students. Time Charter has a record of not realizing its projections and forecasts. Time's response to the notice of violation lacks specificity or supporting documents for their projection. Instead, it includes general statements about fundraising and efforts to minimize expenditures, which lack the specificity necessary for analysis. MTA supports the CDE's proposed recommendation.
Next caller. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Hello, my name is Adriana Dugan, and I am the director for the Montebello Chamber of Commerce, and we are in support of T.I.M.E Community School. It has been an asset to the community to be able to have educational options for our local children and our surrounding cities. Dr. Gabriel Ramirez from T.I.M.E Community School is a chamber member and is active in our community. The chamber currently has interns from T.I.M.E Community School and assists us on various projects here at the chamber. It is an advantage to have a school that designs to fit the child's unique needs and is able to give the child flexibility with smaller class sizes and individualized support. Instead of being forgotten in an overcrowded public school classroom, every child receives the nurturing and tools they need to meet and exceed their academic goals. Our hope is that T.I.M.E Community School continues to provide our children the educational option in our community. Thank you.
Good afternoon, caller. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Hello, my name is Kevin Yoon, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent Educational Services with the Montebello Unified School District. I'm calling to comment on the intent to revoke with notice of facts issued by the State Board of Education for T.I.M.E Community School. T.I.M.E requested Proposition 39 facilities in November 2020 and barely met the minimum projected enrollment for in-district students to qualify for Prop 39. The district approved shared use of facilities with T.I.M.E and provided equal and comparable facilities, equipment, and furniture to T.I.M.E during the 21-22 school year. Throughout the school year, T.I.M.E enrollment did not meet their Prop 39 projections. In fact, their enrollment declined. When T.I.M.E applied for Prop 39 for the 22-23 school year, the request was declined because their projected in-district enrollment did not meet the Prop 39 threshold. Based on the enrollment data reported in the CDE Data Quest website, it shows 62 students enrolled at T.I.M.E for the 22-23 school year. Even an established charter school like KIPP, who has a school in our district, had 28% less enrollment in the 21-22 school year and 34% less enrollment in the 22-23 school year.
Next caller, please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Hi, my name is Dylan Smith, and I work with Charter School Capital. We've been partnering with T.I.M.E since they opened their doors in fall of 2021. As a financial partner, we do extensive underwriting in areas of fiscal responsibility, educational progress, and authorizer relations. As a part of this underwriting process, we did receive a letter dated July 26, 2022, from LACO stating that the school charter was in full force and no corrective actions were being taken against the school, and so they were in good standing, which allowed us to purchase receivables for T.I.M.E. Going forward, we've reviewed Dr. Ramirez's financial plans and believe it's a sound one. If the school was to receive a letter of good standing from this body, then we would be able to reengage and assist the school in areas of financing, enrollment growth, and potentially look again to purchase their school facility. The school has certainly struggled with enrollment, but very few schools that we work with that were courageous enough to open their doors during the pandemic met their enrollment goals. These schools should be viewed through the lens of those extraordinary times and then provided with the assistance they need to help their communities get back to a new normal. We feel it's much too soon to enact the penalties being considered by this body, and instead T.I.M.E should be given the resources that they need, or resources needed to grow further and continue to serve their students. Thank you.
Next caller, please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Good morning, ACCS commissioners. My name is Josiel Canales. I'm a student at T.I.M.E. This is my second year at TCS. I am a student who has never really liked school. To be honest, it's still not my favorite. But ever since I've been coming to this school, I have been doing better. They always support us. If it wasn't for Dr. Ramirez and T.I.M.E, I don't think a lot of the students here would be doing well somewhere else. If you want to be successful, please support T.I.M.E and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Good morning, ACCS commissioners. My name is Emilio Dios, and I'm a student at T.I.M.E Community Schools. I am a ninth grader, and I want to share my experience at T.I.M.E. T.I.M.E is a school that makes academics come first. Not only are we taking classes to get us ready to apply to college, but we are also able to take college classes now. Dr. Ramirez and the teachers are always supporting us by providing opportunities like college classes, have experts come talk to us, help us get internships, and by helping us explore our careers. Everyone who cares about our success is why I see students, including myself, do better each day. Please support our school and vote no. Thank you.
Good afternoon, caller. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Good afternoon, ACCS members. My name is Jill Maricut, and I am the Executive Director for the Montebello Teachers Association. T.I.M.E's response to the notice of violation sent in March 2023 is inadequate, and the CDE has determined that T.I.M.E has not adequately refuted, remedied, or proposed a plan to remedy the violations. The last thing that T.I.M.E needs is more time to prove that they can remedy their fiscal issues. Our students, communities, educators, and families cannot afford for T.I.M.E to fix their issues on their backs. CTA and MTA support the CDE's proposed recommendation that the SBE issue a notice of intent to revoke with notice of fact to T.I.M.E at its May meeting. Thank you.
Next caller, please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Hi, my name is Lamar Brown, and I'm the board president of T.I.M.E Community Schools. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us today. All I can say is that TCS has made great impacts on our students, our parents, and community, and we continue to do so every single day. We set out on this mission years ago, and we have worked hard to make it a reality and sustainable. We have so many ups, so many positives, so many wins that have come with challenges, but we take those head on because we know we have a solid plan in place with our upcoming recruitment, our fundraising, and relationships we have built. TCS means something to our community, and we do not take that lightly. We will continue to fight. We will continue to do what we can for those who are counting on us, and we hope that you can see our efforts are worthy and valuable. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Next caller, please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Good afternoon, ACCS commissioners. My name is Isabella Navarro, and I am a student at T.I.M.E Community School. I am a 10th grader, and this is my first year at T.I.M.E. Prior to coming to T.I.M.E, I was doing bad in school. In fact, I was failing every single class. After my first semester at T.I.M.E, I got 7 B's and 1 C. I feel excited about school now because I know that I can succeed here. I like my teachers and my classes. Everyone supports me and makes sure that I get what I need. Please support T.I.M.E and vote no today. Thank you.
Next caller, please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Good afternoon, ACC commissioners. My name is Cicladine Espinosa, and I'm a student at T.I.M.E Community Schools. I'm a 9th grader and love this school. This school gives me so many opportunities like taking college classes. We participate in clubs every day, and we get to be interns. This year I have been an intern in a tax company, and I have learned so much. In fact, my experience has been so good that the owner wants to give me a job when I'm able. T.I.M.E supports all students. They take the time to get to know us better. So support us individually. Please support T.I.M.E and vote no. Thank you.
Good afternoon, caller. Please state your name and affiliation for the record. Your time starts now.
Hello, my name is Jessica Oswald. I'm with the Montebello Teachers Association. T.I.M.E has earned its right to be served with a violation. During the past couple of times that they have been up for review during the state board meetings, we have heard nothing but plans on how they are going to change their recourse to meet the requirements and promises that they have made to their students, which represents our community. They have had ample time and support to go ahead and make the adjustments to service our students, to ensure that they have proper teachers, taking the proper accountability measures to measure growth with their education, have a counselor on board as promised, and none of this has been done. So I am asking that you go ahead and continue to serve them with the violation. Again, we need to serve in the best interest of our students. Thank you.
Okay, we do not currently have any callers in the queue.
Do we have anyone in person who would like to speak?
Yes, we do, Commissioner. Will the following individuals please line up for public comment? Nicholas Watson, Kaina Collins, and Jason Stomer.
Good afternoon. My name is Nicholas Watson, speaking on behalf of the California Charter Schools Association. I'm here today in support of T.I.M.E. We oppose the notice of revocation. If you deny a charter school access to an affordable school facility and then deny them access to 3 different key charter school funding programs, you should not be surprised when the school encounters financial challenges. That should not be a mystery to anyone. I'd like to say that despite these challenges, T.I.M.E. has continued to increase enrollment. They've put forward reasonable, supportable enrollment projections of growth that will allow them to improve their budget situation. We're confident they can do that. They should be given at least 1 more year to prove what they can do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ACCS members. My name is Kaina Collins, and I am still a veteran charter educator representing the California Teachers Association. I'd like to echo the comments that you heard by the Montebello Teachers Association. While T.I.M.E. provided a fiscal stability plan along with its response to the notice of violation that provides enrollment forecasts and revenue and expenditure projections, the plan does not contain detailed assumptions or supporting documentation for those projections. Rather, the plan includes general statements about fundraising and efforts to minimize expenditures, which lack the specificity necessary for analysis. Accordingly, the CDE finds T.I.M.E.'s fiscal stability plan an inadequate proposal for remedying the violations listed in the notice of violation. CTA supports the CDE's proposed recommendation that the SBE issue a notice of intent to revoke with notice to fax to T.I.M.E. at its May meeting. Thank you.
Jason Sidmer, Managing Director of Charter Impact, here to advocate for T.I.M.E. T.I.M.E. is like many other schools who have struggled with enrollment during the pandemic, especially considering that the school opened in the middle of it. T.I.M.E.'s unique program provides a positive and rewarding educational experience, as you have heard from many students who called in today. Speaking to T.I.M.E.'s financials, the school follows all GAAP-required financial practices. They have had 0 financial findings in their audits, and they have not defaulted on any loans. One note, as implied earlier, debt is not a dollar-for-dollar item with their fund balance. You can give T.I.M.E. one last opportunity to find sustainability through increased enrollment and remain an option for students and families who love this school. Please allow this program to continue. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the comments. All right, so commissioners, this is our time to really dig in and work on the deeper questions. And so, Commissioner King, I'm going to go back to you because it looked like you had the one place you wanted to start.
Yes, my question actually related to my first question related to the addendums to the loan. It says addendum between Gabriel Ramirez and T.I.M.E. Community Schools, and then the other is the addendum between Adrian Enriquez and T.I.M.E. Community Schools, but neither are executed. So I had a question with respect to that.
Yes, so Mr. Ramirez.
Yes, please.
So with respect to both those loans from Mr. Enriquez and myself, and talking to him and speaking on my behalf for myself, we We have verbally given the school the consent that there no default, that we will delay the loan according to the school's needs. But we wanted to also see what the decision of the commission was and ultimately the CDE. So we did inform LACO that we were going to wait for the outcome so that we could execute the loan accordingly.
That's my other question. My other question had to do with ADA projections. So in your presentation, you talked about the fact that the ADA projection was 90%, right, going forward. But historically, 90% hasn't happened. Can you talk about why you think you're going to achieve 90% ADA?
So we projected our 90% on our P1, which was at 90%. And so then that's what we utilized. Again, moving forward right now in terms of we're right at 90%. If we're just right there at that threshold. I mean, as you know, the state superintendent talks about chronic absenteeism and other things that are affecting schools. We're a school that has a lot of students who are struggling, and so that is one of their issues. But we've been utilizing a lot of best practices, have been even utilizing resources from Lakeland in terms of addressing this absenteeism. So we do see students who are increasing their enrollment slowly. So it was a combination of both utilizing our P1 numbers and continuing moving forward the strategies that we've put in place to support families and students.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner, yes, go right ahead. Commissioner Farland.
Mr. Ramirez, could you come? Sorry, I wanted to clarify something that Commissioner King brought up, and I'm just a little confused about it. So there are the two personal loan amounts, one from you and one from the other gentleman, and you stated that you were that you had verbally, I guess, said that those, I guess, would become gifts, not loans, possibly.
Yes.
Okay. And then, but you said you didn't want to give anything in writing until after this process worked itself out.
Well, as you can imagine, that the amount obviously affects me. So.
Oh, no, absolutely. I just wanted to be, I guess I was confused about what needed. So if this decision from the state board next month is that the school would be revoked, and I'm not saying that's it, I'm just saying if that's the path, then would those loans then not be forgiven? I guess I'm trying to understand why you need to wait until this process is done before you decide whether or not you're going to forgive those
based
loans.
on my decision on legal counsel, on the advice that I was given, and that was the advice that I was given because of the financial impact and what's at stake. So that's what the decision's being based on.
Okay, I wanted clarification. Thank you.
So while Mr. Ramirez is there anyone else who has questions for him? Anyone else? I do have a quick question. With all the other conversations that are happening around dollar amounts, et cetera, I'm just curious, when I look at the budget predictions based on enrollment, that I haven't seen any place here where you've grown by 30 or more students. So I'm a little curious as to where you believe that's going to happen and how do you get to the 160. So because you're throughout, regardless of whatever the challenges were, you still had significant high numbers based on what your enrollment projections that never came close to the actual projections. So help me understand a little more about why you're still working on these numbers and the pattern of growth that you see.
So from year one to year two, we had 41 students in year one. In year two, we had 62. So that's the 50% increase. So we utilize those numbers for the following year. So 50% of 60, we did 30, and we just increased it by that 50%. We did it in the 9th grade because we feel like that is the most targeted that we could do for this upcoming year. We feel that's achievable. We feel that's something that we can meet. For the following year, the other thing that we took into account for the following year is that that's really going to be our first full year of afterwards being a fully established year of having all 4 grade levels. One of the things that, again, it's been hard for us to really connect with families on a large scale in terms of recruitment because of the pandemic. And so we're taking into the account now we can use other strategies. So when we did our last year, this current school year in the 10th grade, we did increase by 13 new students. So then again, the little historical data that we gathered, that's the number that we use to add for the subsequent year and base that number to get that equates around the 160 that you see before you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right. So thank you, Mr. Ramirez. So do we have any questions for CDE staff? Looking around. All right. Then I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Taylor, or excuse me, Commissioner Jones.
I move to accept the CDE's recommendation.
All right, so we have a motion to accept the CDE recommendation. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Purcell, I will second.
So we have a motion to move CDE's recommendation forward. Do we have a second? Any final questions or comments? Commissioner Fennell.
Yeah, I just want to say we started off today talking about the importance of the authoriser's role in providing oversight and accountability, and I believe this is what good, effective accountability and oversight looks like.
All right.
I do have a comment. It's not a...
Dr. King.
I just wanted to say, I just wanted to commend all the students that actually called in. It's a tough thing to do, to be able to speak in this type of forum and to advocate on behalf of your school. And no matter what happens, I heard a few of the students say they didn't previously like school or whatever, whatnot. No matter what happens going forward, please continue to dig in. That's the most important thing that'll come out of this process. You, as a child, continue your education no matter what happens. So,
second that statement. All right, let's go ahead and take the vote. We have a motion to move forward with CDE's recommendation, and it has been seconded. And so we'll go ahead and call for the vote. Commissioner Brazil.
Aye.
And Commissioner Farland.
Aye.
And Commissioner Fennell.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Commissioner King.
Aye.
And Commissioner Olmos.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
And myself, I will also vote aye. So it passes unanimously. So with that, thank you to everyone who came to share their testimony, their comments. Thank you to this board, this panel up here, for all of your work on what was definitely a lot of reading and material to go through. If you want to pick your giant binder up over there, that show everybody. It is with great appreciation for all of your work for as long as you've been involved with CDE and prior life that I know you from. A tremendous amount of, you don't get enough compliments and thank yous for all the work that you do and your sincerity around how serious you do take this work in our conversations as well. So from me to you, thank you for the assist and the education on my part. And to all the rest of you, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you for all of your work.
Before we adjourn, just to read it in the record. Sure. Stephanie, you did mention there was a survey on the CDE's website about charters. I couldn't find it. What's it titled?
It is the annual information survey. That's correct, right, McKenna? Just an annual information update, sorry.
And now we are officially adjourned at 1:48. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.